The millionaire's mistake wasn't grabbing the janitor's collar in front of witnesses, but when her eyes locked on his, the crowd didn't see fear. It was assuming she'd be too afraid to fight back. They saw a soldier waking up. The millionaire thought he was humiliating a janitor. He didn't realize he'd just declared war on someone trained to end men like him. Megan Waite had survived 12 years as an Army combat medic in Afghanistan, treated casualties under direct enemy fire, and carried scars from an ambush that killed 6 of her brothers in arms. Now, as Dwayne Martinez tightened his grip and the crowd watched in uncomfortable silence, he had no idea he'd just declared war on someone who'd faced down real monsters in places where money couldn't save you. And what she was about to do next would destroy his empire in ways he never saw coming. Welcome back to our channel. We truly appreciate your love and support. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this one, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's continue. Dwayne P. Martinez adjusted his Italian silk tie and scanned the crowd at his company's annual charity gala, a self-satisfied smirk playing at his lips. At 39, he possessed the kind of polished arrogance that came with inherited money, a tech empire built on other people's ideas, and the absolute certainty that the world existed to serve his vision. The event had cost $250,000 to stage, all tax-deductible, of course, and every detail reflected his personal brand of curated perfection. "Another successful evening, Mr. Martinez," murmured Patricia Chen, his PR director, as she handed him a champagne flute. "The optics are excellent. We're trending on 3 platforms." Dwayne barely glanced at her. "Optics are everything, Patricia. People don't care what you do. They care what they think you do." Behind him, Gordon and Frazier, his personal security team, stood like matching bookends in dark suits, scanning the crowd with professional detachment. Gordon shifted uncomfortably as Dwayne's voice carried across the sidewalk. He'd worked for powerful men before, but there was something particularly cruel about Martinez. The way he smiled when others flinched. The way he needed an audience for his dominance. "Though some people," Dwayne continued, his pale eyes narrowing as he spotted a figure in maroon moving through the crowd, "don't understand that they're part of the scenery, not the show." 50 feet away, Megan A. Waite pushed her cleaning cart along the edge of the gala, collecting abandoned champagne flutes and cocktail napkins. At 36, she moved with an efficiency that management consultants might have called professional presence if they'd ever bothered to notice someone wearing a janitorial uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her maroon polo bore the faded Martinez Global logo over her heart. The street smelled of roasted chestnuts from nearby food carts and expensive perfume from the gala crowd. While donors and executives posed for photos beneath strings of golden lights, Megan saw something different. The broken glass by the curb that could puncture a tire, the spilled drink creating a slip hazard, the uneven pavement that needed marking. More than that, she saw the people who looked through her as if she were invisible furniture. Her hands worked with practiced precision, but her eyes constantly moved, old habits from 12 years in the Army. Threat assessment, escape routes, situational awareness. Most people saw a middle-aged janitor. Megan saw angles of attack, defensive positions, and potential weapons in every mop handle and traffic cone. "Evening, Megan," called Luis Ramirez, one of the young event coordinators, pausing near her cart. Unlike most of the staff, Luis treated her like a human being worth acknowledging. "Evening, Luis. How's your daughter's recital tomorrow?" "Nervous as hell. She's convinced she'll forget her lines. He paused, lowering his voice. Listen, Martinez has been drinking. Just be careful tonight, okay? He's been on a power trip all week. Megan's jaw tightened slightly. I appreciate the heads up. What she didn't say was that she'd survived ambushes in Afghanistan where men with actual weapons had tried to kill her. She didn't mention the Purple Heart in her apartment drawer, the commendations for valor under fire, or the nights when the sound of fireworks still made her reach for a weapon that wasn't there. Civilian life was supposed to be simple, peaceful. She was supposed to blend in, keep her head down, earn an honest living without anyone knowing who she used to be. Luis glanced toward the gala entrance. You'd think someone with his money would be, I don't know, nicer? Megan's expression darkened. Money doesn't make you better. It just makes you louder. The crowd suddenly shifted, voices rising in excitement. Dwayne P. Martinez was making his entrance, flanked by Gordon and Frazier, working the crowd like a politician at a rally. His expensive shoes clicked against the wet pavement as cameras flashed, and then Megan's cleaning cart, bumped by a passing guest, rolled forward, its corner making the softest contact with the gleaming door of Dwayne's imported sports car. The sound was barely audible, a whisper of plastic against metal. But the reaction was immediate. The crowd fell silent. Cameras turned, and Dwayne P. Martinez's face transformed from practiced charm to genuine fury as he spotted Megan standing beside her cart, her hand still on the handle. Well, well, Dwayne said, his voice slicing through the sudden quiet like a blade. If it isn't our resident philosopher. Gordon tensed, his hand instinctively moving toward Dwayne's arm, a silent warning to let it go. But Dwayne shook him off, his pale eyes fixed on Megan with the kind of cruel amusement that came from knowing he held all the power. Megan straightened slowly, her full height bringing her nearly eye level with the millionaire. Up close, she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with top-shelf whiskey, and see the calculation behind his public mask. Every muscle in her body tensed with familiar readiness, the kind that came from years of training, not fear. I apologize, Mr. Martinez, she said quietly, her voice steady. It was an accident. An accident, Dwayne repeated, stepping closer, his shoes reflecting the golden lights overhead. Do you have any idea what this car costs, Megan? Or do janitors not deal with numbers that big? Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Executives checked their phones. Donors pretended to study their champagne. But everyone was listening. This had become dinner theater, and Megan realized Dwayne had been waiting for an excuse like this. A chance to remind everyone of the hierarchy he'd built. I'll take care of any damage, sir, Megan replied, her voice carrying a calm that made Frazier shift uncomfortably. You'll take care of it? Dwayne's smile was arctic as he reached out and gripped her collar, yanking her forward. His gold Patek Philippe watch caught the light as he pulled her close enough that she could count the broken blood vessels in his eyes. You'll never take care of anything that matters. People like you clean up after people like me. The crowd had gone completely still. Gordon's hand twitched toward his boss again, but he stopped, years of training warring with a conscience that had been eroding for months. Frazier looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. But Megan didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on Dwayne's with the quiet authority of someone who'd faced down real danger. The kind that made his corporate power look like playground politics. She'd been grabbed before, threatened before, underestimated her entire life. and she was done backing down. "Careful, Mr. Martinez," Megan said softly, her voice cutting through the tension like a razor. "You're stepping into a kind of fight you can't win." Dwayne laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." The words hung in the rain-soaked air between them. Gordon felt his stomach drop. Fraser's hand moved instinctively to his waistband. And somewhere in the crowd, a phone camera kept recording. Dwayne's grip tightened on her collar, his face flushing with fury and embarrassment. "You think because you've got some smart mouth, you can embarrass me in front of my investors? In front of my company?" Megan didn't step back. Her military training had taught her that retreat invited aggression, that predators only respected strength. "I think," she said quietly, "that everyone deserves basic respect, regardless of their job title." Dwayne's eyes narrowed to slits. "You know what your problem is, Megan. You don't know your place." The street fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic and the soft patter of rain beginning to fall harder. Megan's jaw tightened, and for just a moment, so brief that only Gordon caught it, something dangerous flickered behind her calm expression. Something that spoke of battlefields and survival, and a past that had nothing to do with cleaning floors. "My place," Megan said, her voice carrying the weight of 12 years in combat zones, "is wherever I'm standing." The door to Megan's apartment clicked shut behind her at 11:47 p.m., sealing out the sound of distant traffic and the memory of champagne-soaked laughter. She stood in the small entryway for a long moment, her maroon work polo still damp from the rain, feeling the weight of the evening settle into her bones like old shrapnel. The apartment was modest, a studio in a converted warehouse building where the rent was cheap, and the neighbors minded their own business. Exposed brick walls. A Murphy bed she rarely bothered to fold down. A kitchenette with exactly 3 plates, 2 mugs, and a coffee maker that had seen better days. On the single bookshelf sat a small collection of paperbacks, a framed photo of her army unit, and a locked box she hadn't opened in 6 months. Megan dropped her keys on the counter and moved to the bathroom, her reflection catching her by surprise in the mirror. There were no visible marks on her neck where Dwayne had grabbed her collar, but she could still feel the pressure of his fingers, the weight of his contempt, the laughter of the crowd. She splashed cold water on her face, letting it drip down her chin, focusing on the sensation to ground herself in the present. This was a technique her VA therapist had taught her, sensory anchoring. When the past tried to pull her under, focus on the now, the temperature of the water, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of rain against the window. But tonight, the past wasn't staying buried. "Martinez, we've got wounded. 3 down, 3 down." The taste of dust and blood. The weight of a trauma kit in her hands. Jenkins screaming as she tried to stop the bleeding from his femoral artery. The distinctive crack of sniper fire. "Medic! We need a medic now!" Megan gripped the edge of the sink, breathing slowly through her nose. 4 counts in. Hold. 6 counts out. The memories always came when she was angry or afraid. 2 emotions that used to fuel her survival instincts, but now just made her feel like she was drowning on dry land. After a moment, the flashback receded. She dried her face and changed into worn sweatpants and an Army PT shirt that was 2 sizes too big. A remnant from her old life that she couldn't quite throw away. Her phone buzzed on the counter, then again, and again. Megan picked it up, her stomach sinking as she saw the notifications flooding her lock screen. Text messages from coworkers. missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize, and dozens of alerts from social media apps she rarely used. She opened the first message, from Luis, the event coordinator who'd warned her earlier. Luis. Megan, someone posted video of what happened. It's everywhere. Are you okay? Her thumb hesitated over the screen before she opened Twitter. The clip was already at the top of her feed, posted by an account called @Watching the Wealthy. The video quality was shaky, but clear enough. Dwayne grabbing her collar, yanking her close, his face twisted with contempt. Her calm response. The crowd's uncomfortable silence. The caption read, "Millionaire tech bro Dwayne Martinez publicly humiliates and assaults his own employee at charity event. This is what entitlement looks like." Martinez Global Corporate Abuse. The tweet had 47,000 likes and counting. Megan scrolled through the comments, her jaw tightening with each one she read. This is disgusting. She's just trying to do her job. Of course Martinez PR is spinning this as a misunderstanding. We all saw him grab her. Anyone know who she is? Someone buy this woman a drink. Classic tech bro behavior. Power corrupts. But mixed in with the support were the expected attacks. She probably bumped his car on purpose for attention. If you can't handle criticism, don't work in service. She's making a big deal out of nothing. Martinez built a billion-dollar company. Show some respect. Megan locked her phone and set it face down on the counter. She didn't want attention, didn't want to be a symbol or a trending hashtag. She just wanted to be left alone, to work her shifts, collect her paycheck, and exist in the quiet anonymity she'd built for herself since leaving the army. But Dwayne Martinez had taken that choice away from her the moment he decided to make her an example. She moved to the small window overlooking the street below. A few cars passed through puddles, their headlights reflecting off wet asphalt. The city looked peaceful from up here, manageable. Nothing like the chaos she'd known overseas, where every sound could be a threat and every shadow could hide an enemy. Her eyes drifted to the locked box on her bookshelf. She knew exactly what was inside without opening it. Her Purple Heart, her Army Commendation medals, her combat medical badge, and a folded flag that had once draped Jenkins's coffin. Also inside were 6 dog tags that didn't belong to her, each one representing a life she couldn't save. Afghanistan, 2019. Forward Operating Base Wolverine. She'd been with the same unit for 18 months, long enough that they'd stopped being soldiers and started being family. Jenkins, the kid from Georgia, who talked about his mama's peach cobbler. Torres, the motor-mouth sergeant who could fix anything. Pak, the Korean-American sniper with a philosophy degree. Chen, Martinez, Williams. 6 names she recited every night before sleep, like a prayer or a penance. The ambush had come during a routine supply convoy. Insurgents with RPGs and heavy machine guns, positioned on high ground with perfect firing angles. The convoy had scattered, vehicles smoking and burning, and Megan had done what she was trained to do. She'd run toward the wounded instead of away from the danger. Jenkins first. Arterial bleed, tourniquet, pressure, prayer. Torres next. Shrapnel wounds, chest compressions, desperate calculations about minutes and blood loss. Then the world had exploded in fire and noise, and when the smoke cleared, all 6 of them were gone. She'd walked away with a concussion, a dislocated shoulder, and survivor's guilt that weighed more than both. The Army had called her a hero, given her medals and commendations, offered her promotion and a chance to train the next generation of combat medics. But Megan knew the truth. Heroes saved people. She'd just watched them die. A sharp knock on her apartment door jolted her back to the present. Her body reacted before her mind caught up, dropping into a defensive stance, eyes scanning for threats, muscles coiled and ready. "Megan, it's Danny from downstairs." The voice was familiar, non-threatening. Her neighbor? A retired transit worker who sometimes shared coffee with her on Sunday mornings. She forced herself to relax, rolling her shoulders back as she moved to the door. Through the peephole, she could see Danny's weathered face, his gray hair mussed like he'd just woken up. Megan opened the door a crack, the security chain still engaged. "Danny, it's late. Everything okay?" "I should be asking you that." He held up his phone. The video of her confrontation with Dwayne paused on the screen. "My granddaughter sent me this. Said it's all over the internet. That's you, isn't it?" Megan sighed, her hand moving to unlatch the chain. "Yeah, that's me." Danny stepped inside, his expression a mix of concern and something else, anger on her behalf. "That man put his hands on you, in front of all those people. You file charges? It's not that simple. The hell it isn't. You've got video evidence and witnesses." Megan moved to the kitchenette, pulling down 2 mugs and starting the coffee maker out of habit. "Danny, I appreciate the concern, but men like Dwayne Martinez don't face consequences. They've got lawyers and PR teams and enough money to bury people like me in paperwork. Filing charges would just make my life harder." Danny settled onto the small couch against the wall, studying her with eyes that had seen too much of the world's injustice. "You know, you remind me of my daughter. She was Army too. Served in Iraq. Came home with some scars she didn't want to talk about." Megan's hand paused over the coffee maker. She'd never told Danny about her service, had been careful to keep that part of her life separate. "The way you carry yourself," Danny continued, "the way you're always watching everything. I recognized it. My daughter was the same way." His voice softened. "She never learned how to ask for help. Thought she had to handle everything alone, because that's what the military taught her." "I'm handling it," Megan said quietly, pouring coffee into both mugs. "Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you just got assaulted by your boss. It's all over the internet, and you're up here alone pretending it didn't happen." The words hit harder than Megan expected. She handed Danny his coffee and sat in the single chair across from him, cradling her own mug between her palms. "What do you want me to say, Danny? That I'm angry? That I want to make him pay?" She stared into the dark liquid. "I spent 12 years fighting. I'm done with that life." "There's different kinds of fighting, Megan. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about violence. It's about refusing to disappear just because someone wants you to." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the rain that had started up again outside. Finally, Danny set down his mug and stood. "My granddaughter, the one who sent me the video, she's a labor rights lawyer. If you change your mind about pressing charges or filing a complaint, I can get you her number." "Thanks," Megan said, walking him to the door. "But I'll be fine." Danny paused in the doorway, turning back to look at her. "You know what my daughter told me before she passed? She said the hardest part about coming home wasn't the memories or the nightmares. It was learning that some battles you have to fight, even when you're tired of fighting." After he left, Megan locked the door and leaned against it, his words echoing in the quiet apartment. She wanted to believe she could just let this go. Show up to work on Monday, keep her head down, let the internet outrage cycle move on to the next viral moment. But deep down, she knew that wasn't going to happen. 20 blocks away, In the penthouse office of Martinez Global Holdings, Dwayne Martinez hurled a crystal tumbler against the floor-to-ceiling window. The glass exploded into 1,000 fragments, amber whiskey streaming down the glass like tears. "Damage control," he snarled at Patricia Chen, who stood near his desk with her tablet clutched like a shield. "You said you'd handle this." "We've issued a statement," Patricia replied, her voice carefully measured, calling it a misunderstanding, explaining that tensions were high at the event and nobody's buying it. Dwayne stalked to his computer, pulling up Twitter on the massive monitor. "Look at this. Corporate tyrant. Entitled millionaire. They're calling for boycotts of our tech platforms. Our stock dropped 2 points in after-hours trading." Gordon stood by the door, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Next to him, Fraser scrolled through his own phone, his jaw tight with barely contained frustration. "Sir, if I may," Patricia said carefully, "the best approach might be to issue a personal apology. Meet with Ms. Waite privately, offer compensation." "Apologize?" Dwayne spun to face her, his pale eyes wild. "To a janitor. You want me to apologize for disciplining an employee who damaged company property? The optics? The optics will be fine once people remember who actually matters in this city." Dwayne moved to his bar cart, pouring himself another drink with shaking hands. "That woman, Megan, whatever her name is, she thinks she can embarrass me, make me look weak in front of investors." Gordon shifted uncomfortably. "Boss, maybe Patricia's right. If you just— I don't pay you to think, Gordon. I pay you to stand there and look intimidating." Dwayne drained half the glass in one swallow. "This needs to be handled. Quietly. I want that woman gone. Fired. Bought out. Scared off. I don't care. But she doesn't get to make me look like the bad guy." Fraser looked up from his phone. "You want us to have a conversation with her? I want you to make sure she understands her place in the food chain." Gordon's stomach twisted. "Sir, with respect, that might escalate things. The video is already everywhere. If something happens to her now, then make sure nothing seems to happen to her." Dwayne's smile was cold and calculated. "Accidents happen in parking garages. People quit when the pressure gets too much. You're creative, aren't you, Fraser?" Fraser nodded slowly, but Gordon caught something in his colleague's expression. Uncertainty mixed with loyalty, a dangerous combination. This is a mistake," Gordon said quietly. Dwayne's eyes narrowed. "Are you refusing an assignment?" The room fell silent except for the sound of rain against the windows. Gordon met his boss's gaze, weighing his next words carefully. He'd worked for Dwayne Martinez for 3 years, watched him bully employees, manipulate investors, and treat people like chess pieces. But this felt different. This felt like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "I'm saying that woman didn't back down when you grabbed her in front of 50 witnesses," Gordon replied. "What makes you think threatening her in private will end any better?" "Because in private, there are no cameras," Dwayne said. "No witnesses. No hashtags." He turned to Patricia. "Get me everything on Megan Waite. Employment history, references, background check. I want to know if she's ever so much as gotten a parking ticket." Patricia's fingers moved across her tablet, her expression carefully neutral. "I'll have it by morning." As they filed out of Dwayne's office, Gordon caught Fraser's arm in the empty corridor. "We're not doing this," Gordon said quietly. Fraser shook him off. "He's the boss. He pays us to follow orders. He pays us to provide security, not intimidate employees. You heard him. It's just a conversation. We explain the situation, maybe offer her a severance package. with implied threats if she doesn't take it. Gordon stepped closer, lowering his voice. I looked her up after the gala. Megan Waite isn't just some janitor. She's former Army, 12 years, multiple deployments, commendations for combat medical service. Her military record is partially classified, which means she was involved in something serious. Fraser's expression flickered with uncertainty. So that woman has dealt with real threats, real violence. Whatever we try to pull, she'll see coming from a mile away. Gordon glanced back toward Dwayne's office, and if we back her into a corner, she might just decide to fight back. Then what do you suggest? Gordon was silent for a long moment, his mind racing through scenarios and outcomes. Every option felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. I suggest, he finally said, that we remember who we are. We're not thugs. We're not enforcers. And whatever Martinez is planning, we don't have to be part of it. Fraser studied him, conflict written across his features. You're talking about walking away. I'm talking about not becoming the kind of men who threaten women in parking garages. They stood in the empty corridor, rain hammering against the windows, while somewhere 20 blocks away, Megan Waite stared at her locked box of memories and wondered if peace was ever really an option for people like her. The battlefield had changed, but the predators still wore the same face, just better suits. Gordon Hayes sat in his car in the Martinez Global parking garage at 2:17 a.m., the glow of his laptop screen casting blue shadows across his face. Rain drummed against the windshield in steady rhythm, and somewhere above him, the building's security cameras swept their programmed arcs, blind spots he knew by heart after 3 years on the job. He shouldn't be doing this. Shouldn't be using his security clearance to access employee records. Shouldn't be digging into Megan Waite's background like some private investigator with a guilty conscience. But he couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd looked at Dwayne. Not with fear, but with the kind of cold assessment that came from experience Gordon recognized. He'd seen it before in operators he'd worked with during his own time in private military contracting. The look of someone calculating angles, distances, and threat levels in real time. Gordon navigated through the company's HR database, pulling up Megan's employment file. The basics were unremarkable. Hired 18 months ago, perfect attendance, 0 disciplinary actions, minimal sick days. Her previous address was listed as a VA transitional housing facility in Maryland. Before that, nothing. Just a 12-year gap in her employment history with a single notation: military service, honorable discharge. He opened a private browser and accessed a database he still had credentials for from his contracting days, one that pulled basic military service records for background checks. He typed in her name, social security number, and date of birth. What came back made him sit up straighter. Wait, Megan A. Rank, Staff Sergeant, E6, Branch, U.S. Army, MOS, 68W, Combat Medic Specialist. Years of service, 12. Deployments, Afghanistan, 3 tours, Iraq, 1 tour, awards and commendations. Purple Heart, Army Commendation Medal. 2. Combat Medical Badge, redacted. Gordon's pulse quickened. 2 redacted commendations usually meant classified operations, special forces support, high-value target missions, things that didn't make it into public records. He tried to access the detailed service record, but hit a wall of red text. Restricted access. Defense Department clearance required. This service member's complete record is classified under Special Operations Medical Command, SOMC. Unauthorized access is a federal offense. Jesus Christ, Gordon muttered, leaning back in his seat. Special Operations Medical Command wasn't where they sent regular medics. That was where they sent the ones who embedded with Rangers, Green Berets, and SEAL teams. The ones who could shoot as well as they could stitch. He ran another search, this time through public military news archives. After 20 minutes of scrolling, he found a brief article from 2019. Army medic awarded for valor in Afghanistan. Ambush a U.S. Army combat medic received the Army Commendation Medal for extraordinary heroism after an insurgent ambush on a supply convoy near Kandahar province. The medic, whose name is being withheld for security reasons, treated multiple casualties under direct enemy fire and coordinated medical evacuation despite being wounded. While 6 soldiers died in the attack, military officials stated that the number would have been significantly higher without the medic's actions. Gordon read the article 3 times, his mind connecting dots he didn't want to see. The date matched Megan's service timeline, the redacted name, the classification level. The quiet janitor who'd stood up to Dwayne Martinez hadn't just been in the Army. She'd been the kind of soldier they wrote about in after-action reports and classified briefings. The kind who ran toward gunfire instead of away from it. And Dwayne wanted to send Frazier to have a conversation with her in a parking garage. Gordon closed his laptop and pressed his palms against his eyes, feeling the weight of a decision he hadn't wanted to make settling onto his shoulders like body armor. 3 floors above the parking garage, Megan pushed her cleaning cart through the executive level's empty corridors, her phone tucked in her pocket and recording every sound. It was 2:43 a.m., the sweet spot when even the most dedicated workaholics had gone home, and the night security rotation was focused on the ground floor and exterior perimeter. She'd learned the building's rhythms over 18 months. Which executives stayed late? Which doors had faulty locks? Where the security cameras had blind spots? Information she'd filed away without thinking about why. Old habits from a life where situational awareness meant survival. But tonight, she had a purpose. The IT department was located at the north end of the executive floor, a secured area requiring keycard access. Megan pulled out the card she'd borrowed from a maintenance supervisor's desk earlier that evening, swiping it through the reader. The light flashed green. Inside, rows of servers hummed in climate-controlled darkness, their indicator lights blinking like distant stars. Megan moved past them to the workstations clustered near the back wall, settling into a chair that still held the warmth of whoever had last occupied it. She pulled out a USB drive, given to her 3 hours earlier by Marcus Chen, a 23-year-old IT specialist who'd watched the viral video of her confrontation and decided that loyalty to Martinez Global didn't extend to covering up whatever Dwayne was hiding. "I shouldn't be doing this," Marcus had whispered earlier that evening, pressing the drive into her hand in the parking garage. "But I've seen things in the transaction logs that don't add up. Money moving through the charity foundation to offshore accounts. Files being deleted and overwritten. If someone like you is asking questions, maybe there's a reason." "What makes you think I'm asking questions?" Megan had replied. "Because you didn't back down when Martinez grabbed you. Most people here are terrified of him, but you looked at him like he was just another problem to solve." Marcus had glanced around nervously. "Whatever's on that drive, it's encrypted. But I included the decryption key and instructions. Just be careful. Martinez doesn't like people digging into his business." Now, alone in the dark AT department, Megan inserted the drive and followed Marcus's instructions. The screen filled with folders: Charity Gala 2024, offshore transfers, voice memos, security logs. She opened the Charity Gala folder first. Inside were transaction records from the event that had ended with Dwayne's hands on her collar. The legitimate donations were clearly documented, $347,000 raised from various donors, all properly recorded. But beneath that legitimate layer was something else entirely. Megan scrolled through spreadsheets that showed money being moved in complex patterns, donations coming in from shell corporations, being processed through the Martinez Global Charitable Foundation, then transferred to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. The amounts were staggering, not the thousands from the gala, but millions moving through the system like water through a carefully engineered network of pipes. Her military training had included basic intelligence gathering, enough to recognize money laundering when she saw it. This wasn't just creative accounting or tax avoidance, this was systematic criminal enterprise hiding behind a veneer of philanthropy. She opened the voice memos folder next. The files were dated over the past 6 months, recorded by what sounded like hidden microphones in Dwayne's office. Marcus had been collecting evidence, whether for his own protection or some other reason, Megan didn't know. But what she heard made her jaw tighten. Dwayne's voice, arrogant and casual, the charity angle is perfect. Nobody questions philanthropists. We process the funds through the foundation, take our cut, and the rest disappears offshore. The IRS will never untangle it. Another voice, Patricia Chen, the PR director. What about audits? I've got 3 accountants whose job is to make sure audits find exactly what we want them to find. The beauty of this system is that it's legal on paper. We're just creative with our interpretation. Megan's fingers moved across the keyboard, copying files to her own encrypted drive. She'd learned basic cybersecurity from Army intelligence specialists, not enough to be a hacker, but enough to cover her tracks and secure evidence. The security logs folder revealed something even more disturbing: records of Dwayne ordering surveillance on employees he considered problems. Email monitoring, phone records, even physical tracking through keycard swipes. A dozen names were flagged, including several former employees who'd left the company under mysterious circumstances. And at the bottom of the list, added just 6 hours ago, her own name. Wait, Megan A., priority surveillance, reason, potential liability following public incident. Monitor all communications and movements. Report any suspicious activity to D. Martinez directly. Megan felt ice slide down her spine, not from fear, but from recognition. She'd seen this pattern before in Afghanistan, watching enemy commanders identify threats and plan responses. Dwayne was moving from public humiliation to active suppression. She was being hunted. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Stop what you're doing. Leave the building. Now. Megan's hand moved instinctively toward her waistband, where she would have kept a sidearm during her military service. Finding nothing, she instead pulled up the security camera feed on the workstation, cycling through different views. There, in the parking garage, Gordon Hayes, sitting in his car, phone in hand, staring at his laptop screen with an expression she recognized. Conflict, decision, moral crossroads. Another text appeared, unknown. This is Gordon. I know you're in the IT depot. Security sweep happens in 8 minutes. Get out. Megan ejected her USB drive and wiped the browser history with practiced efficiency. She stood, moved to the door, and paused, military instinct making her check the corridor before exposing herself. Clear. She slipped out, moving quickly but not running, her cleaning cart abandoned in favor of speed. The stairwell door closed behind her just as she heard the elevator ding at the far end of the corridor. In his penthouse office, Dwayne Martinez stood at the window overlooking the rain-soaked city, a glass of scotch in one hand and his phone in the other. Patricia had sent him Megan Waite's complete employment file an hour ago, but it was frustratingly thin. No social media presence, no criminal record, no financial problems. Nothing he could leverage. The woman was a ghost, which made her dangerous. "Sir?" Fraser's voice came through the phone's speaker. "Just finished the building sweep. Nothing unusual on the executive floor, but the IT access logs show a maintenance keycard was used 20 minutes ago." Dwayne's grip tightened on his glass. "Which maintenance worker?" "Card belongs to supervisor named Ramirez, but according to the camera timestamps, he left the building at 9 p.m. Someone borrowed his card." Dwayne's voice was cold, calculated. "Pull the security footage from the IT department. I want to know who was in there and what they were doing." On it, Dwayne ended the call and pulled up the viral video on his phone for the 100th time, watching Megan's face as he grabbed her collar. Most people would have shown fear, anger, maybe humiliation. But her expression held something else. Assessment, calculation. The look of someone deciding whether a threat was worth engaging. He'd built his empire by reading people, by knowing which ones would fold and which ones needed to be broken differently. Megan. Waite wasn't folding, which meant she needed to be dealt with before she became a bigger problem. His phone rang. "Patricia." "Tell me you have something useful," Dwayne said. "I found a gap in her background check, 12 years unaccounted for, just listed as military service. I've been making calls, trying to get her service record unsealed. And I'm getting stonewalled. Her file is classified under something called Special Operations Medical Command. That's not standard for regular military personnel." Dwayne felt something cold settle in his chest. "What does that mean?" "It means," Patricia said carefully, "that Megan Waite might not be the easy target you think she is. These classifications are used for soldiers embedded with elite units, the kind who see combat that doesn't make it into official reports." "I don't care if she was a Navy SEAL," Dwayne snapped. "She's a janitor now, and janitors don't fight back against people like me." But even as he said it, he remembered the look in her eyes, the absolute lack of fear, the warning she'd given him. "You're stepping into a kind of fight you can't win." For the first time since the gala, doubt crept into Dwayne's mind. Not regret. He didn't do regret, but a growing awareness that he might have underestimated his opponent. His phone buzzed with a security alert. Surveillance footage, ready for review. It tapped unauthorized access. Dwayne pulled up the footage on his computer. The image quality was grainy, the figure mostly hidden by shadows and the angles of the camera, but there was no mistaking the maroon work uniform or the purposeful way she moved through the space. Megan Waite had been in his IT department, had accessed workstations, had been in the system. "Son of a bitch," Dwayne whispered. She wasn't just defiant. She was actively investigating him. He grabbed his phone and called Fraser back. "Change of plans. I want eyes on Megan Waite 24/7. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to, everything she does. And I want to know what she was looking for in that IT department." "Boss, if she's already suspicious, then we make her more than suspicious. We make her scared." Dwayne's voice hardened with resolve. "Fear is how you control people. And if she won't be controlled, she'll be eliminated. Professionally, quietly, permanently." He hung up and downed the rest of his scotch, staring at the frozen image of Megan on his screen. The battlefield had shifted. This was no longer about public humiliation or corporate discipline. This was war, and Dwayne Martinez had never lost a war he started. In her apartment, Megan sat at her small kitchen table, her laptop open, the USB drive connected, files uploading to an encrypted cloud server linked to an email address she hadn't used in 3 years, one monitored by former military intelligence contacts who owed her favors. She typed a brief message. Evidence attached. Subject: Dwayne Martinez, Martinez Global Holdings. Crimes: money laundering, charity fraud, employee intimidation. May need backup if situation escalates. Will advise. Her finger hovered over the send button. This was the point of no return. Once she sent this, she wasn't just defending herself, she was going on the offensive. She was choosing to fight instead of disappear. The locked box on her shelf seemed to pulse in her peripheral vision, all those medals and memories waiting to remind her of what fighting had cost. But then she remembered Dwayne's hands on her collar, his breath in her face, his certainty that people like her existed only to serve people like him. And she remembered the faces of her unit: Jenkins, Torres, Pack, Chen, Martinez, Williams. They'd died fighting for something they believed in, for principles that mattered. Maybe it was time she did the same. Megan pressed send. The battlefields had changed, but the predators still wore the same face. They just had better lawyers now. The service corridor on Martinez Global's 3rd floor was a place most employees never saw. A utilitarian tunnel of concrete walls, exposed pipes, and flickering fluorescent lights that connected the building's mechanical systems. It smelled of industrial cleaner and old dust, and the only sound was the distant hum of HVAC units pushing air through metal ducts. Gordon waited in the shadows near the electrical panel, checking his watch for the 3rd time. 3:47 a.m. Megan's shift rotation brought her through this corridor every night at this time, a pattern he'd observed over the past 72 hours while following Dwayne's surveillance orders. Orders he was about to violate. Footsteps echoed from around the corner, measured, purposeful, the sound of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Megan appeared, pushing her cleaning cart, her maroon uniform looking gray under the sickly fluorescent light. She saw him immediately, her body language shifting in a way most people wouldn't notice, weight transferring to the balls of her feet, shoulders squaring, eyes assessing potential threats. She didn't look surprised. "Mr. Hayes," Megan said, her voice neutral as she stopped several feet away. Maintaining distance, Gordon noted, maintaining tactical space. "This is an unusual place for a security consultation. I needed somewhere without cameras." Gordon glanced up at the ceiling, where the building's sophisticated surveillance network had a rare blind spot. "We need to talk." "About how long you've been following me?" Megan's tone wasn't accusatory, just factual. "Or about why you're doing it reluctantly, instead of professionally." Gordon felt something twist in his chest. "You knew." "I've been tracked by people who actually wanted to kill me, Mr. Hayes. You're not exactly subtle." She leaned against her cart, arms crossed, but her posture remained alert. "So, which is it? Are you here to threaten me, or warn me?" The directness caught him off guard. Most people in Megan's position would be defensive, scared, trying to talk their way out of trouble. But she stood there with the calm patience of someone waiting for relevant intelligence before deciding on a course of action. "Warn you," Gordon said. "Dwayne knows you were in the IT department 2 nights ago. He knows you accessed files, and he's planning to make an example out of you." Megan's expression didn't change. "What kind of example?" "The kind that makes you quit or disappear." Gordon took a step closer, lowering his voice even though they were alone. "He's bringing in an outside contractor, not corporate security. Someone with a different skill set. Fraser's coordinating. They're planning something for tomorrow night after your shift ends." "Something," Megan repeated. "You're going to need to be more specific than that, Mr. Hayes." Gordon ran a hand through his hair, frustration and guilt warring in his expression. "I don't have all the details, but I've seen this pattern before with other employees who became problems for Martinez. They get cornered in parking garages, elevators, places where accidents can happen. Sometimes it's just intimidation. Rough them up. Make them understand they're powerless. Sometimes it's worse." "And you're telling me this out of the goodness of your heart?" Megan's eyes searched his face. "Or because your background check on me made you realize I'm not your average target?" Gordon's silence was answer enough. "I found your access trail in the military database," Megan continued. "You're not bad at covering your tracks, but you're not as good as you think. Former private military contractor, right? Executive protection, mostly. But you've done other work, the kind that doesn't go on LinkedIn." "Then you know I recognize what you are," Gordon said quietly. "Special Operations Medical Command doesn't take regular soldiers. They take the ones who can function in environments where the rules don't apply, where shooting and saving lives are part of the same skill set." Megan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "That was a different life." "Was it? Because the way you carry yourself, the way you read threats, that doesn't just go away because you changed uniforms." Gordon stepped closer, his voice urgent. "Whatever you found in those files, it's not worth getting hurt over. Martinez has resources, connections, people who make problems disappear. You file whatever evidence you have with the authorities and let them handle it." "Like they handled all his other problems?" Megan's voice carried an edge now. "How many other employees has he done this to, Mr. Hayes? How many people just disappeared because it was easier than fighting back?" Gordon looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "More than I'd like to admit." "And you went along with it. I told myself I was just doing my job, following orders. That what happened after I delivered the warnings wasn't my responsibility." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "But watching that video of him grabbing you, seeing everyone just stand there and let it happen, I can't do this anymore." Megan studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she pushed off from her cleaning cart and walked to the concrete wall, running her fingers along the rough surface. "You know what the difference is between military combat and civilian conflict, Mr. Hayes?" She didn't wait for an answer. "In combat, everyone knows they're in a fight. The rules are clear. You engage or you retreat. But nobody pretends it's something else." She turned to face him, and in the harsh fluorescent light, Gordon could see the weight she carried, not just in her eyes, but in the set of her shoulders. The way she held herself like someone who'd learned that relaxation was a luxury. But in civilian life, predators like Martinez hide behind rules and social contracts. They hurt people and call it business. They threaten and call it management. And everyone pretends it's normal, because challenging it means admitting we're all complicit in the system that protects them. "So what are you going to do?" Gordon asked. Megan's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough that Gordon felt his instincts prickle with warning. "He's already made an example out of me, Mr. Hayes. He just doesn't realize it yet." The words hung in the stale air between them, and Gordon understood he was looking at someone who'd already made a decision, someone who'd stopped retreating. "If you're planning what I think you're planning," Gordon said carefully, "you'll need support. Intelligence on Dwayne's movements, the contractor's background, Fraser's weak points. Are you offering?" Gordon met her eyes. "I'm saying that if I'm going to lose my job and possibly face legal consequences for betraying my employer, I'd rather do it helping someone fight back than helping someone run away. Megan extended her hand. Then I guess we're allies, Mr. Hayes. Gordon shook it, her grip firm and calloused. Call me Gordon, and for what it's worth, I looked up that Afghanistan ambush from 2019, the one where 6 soldiers died and 1 medic saved a dozen more under direct fire. That was you, wasn't it? Megan's hand tensed in his, then released. That's classified information. The official report is, but I've got contacts who remember. They said the medic who survived that day carried more than physical scars. She carried the weight of everyone she couldn't save. That it broke something in her. It did, Megan said quietly. But broken things can be reforged into something stronger. Something that doesn't bend when people like Martinez apply pressure. Gordon nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Everything you know about Dwayne's schedule for tomorrow night. The contractor's name and background if you can get it, and access to the building's security system. I need to control what the cameras see and don't see. That's ambitious. That's survival. Megan pulled out her phone, opening an encrypted messaging app. This is my secure line. Anything you send goes through military-grade encryption. Use it. Gordon added the contact information, then hesitated. You know, there's a good chance this ends badly for both of us, right? Even if we expose Martinez, he's got lawyers who'll bury us in litigation. We could lose everything. I lost everything in a dusty valley in Afghanistan, Gordon. Lost 6 people I swore to protect. Lost my faith that doing the right thing matters. Megan's voice was steady, but her eyes held something fierce. If I lose everything again fighting back against a bully in an expensive suit, at least this time, it'll be my choice. 90 minutes later, Megan sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by equipment she hadn't touched in 3 years. The tactical bag lay open beside her, military-issue Cordura nylon, faded and scarred from multiple deployments, with her old unit patch still sewn onto the front pocket. Inside, she'd kept the tools of her former life, medical supplies that never expired in her mind, a tactical flashlight rated for 1,200 lumens, zip-tie restraints she'd used for securing detainees, and a collection of small tools that served multiple purposes in the right hands. But tonight, she was adding new elements, civilian equipment purchased with cash over the past 48 hours. A body camera no bigger than a shirt button, wireless, and connected to a cloud server she'd set up through her military intelligence contacts. 3 additional micro cameras that could be hidden in plain sight, each with 8 hours of battery life and motion-activated recording. A voice-activated audio recorder disguised as a pen. A tactical pepper spray rated for law enforcement use. No weapons. Nothing that could be construed as premeditation for violence. She was preparing for documentation, for evidence, for turning whatever ambush Dwayne planned into his own public execution. Her phone buzzed. A message from Gordon on the encrypted line. Gordon, contractor's name is Vincent Russo, former NYPD dismissed for excessive force, now works private intimidation. Dwayne's paying him $15,000 for employee management consultation. They're planning to corner you in the underground parking garage tomorrow at 11:45 p.m. After night security's patrol rotation, Megan typed back, "How many total?" Gordon, Russo, Frazier, and possibly 1 additional. Dwayne won't be there. Maintains plausible deniability. The plan is to rough you up, destroy your phone, and make it clear that talking about what you found means worse next time. Megan's fingers moved across the screen. Change of plans. I'll make sure I'm there. alone, visible, but not vulnerable. Gordon. That's suicide. Megan. No, that's tactical advantage. They think they're hunting prey, but you don't hunt predators the same way you hunt prey. Gordon. What do you need from me? Megan. Access to parking garage camera feeds. I need you to loop the footage, make it look like I left the building at my normal time, but keep a backup recording of what actually happens. And when I give the signal, you call 911, not building security, actual police. Gordon. What signal, Megan? You'll know it when you see it. She set down her phone and continued loading her tactical bag, her movements methodical and practiced. Each item had a purpose. Each tool fit into a larger strategy that was taking shape in her mind like a mission brief. The body camera would attach to her shirt collar, nearly invisible but capturing everything in high definition. The additional cameras would be positioned in the parking garage earlier in the day, on support columns, near the elevator, by the exit ramps. Multiple angles, multiple perspectives, impossible to dispute. The pepper spray would stay in her pocket, accessible, but not obvious. A defensive tool, not an offensive weapon. Everything she did had to be justifiable as self-defense, as a scared employee protecting herself from corporate goons, even though she wasn't scared, hadn't been scared since Afghanistan, where fear was just another tactical variable to account for and overcome. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from an unknown number with a military domain. Unknown. Evidence received and analyzed. Recommend immediate extraction and witness protection. This is bigger than corporate fraud. Martinez has connections to organized crime. You're in danger. Megan typed back. Noted, but extraction means he wins. Means he keeps doing this to other people. I'm finishing what I started. Unknown. Sergeant, wait, you're not active duty anymore. You don't have to be the hero. Megan. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm trying to be what my team needed in Afghanistan. Someone who doesn't run when things get hard. She waited, but no response came. Her contacts knew better than to argue with her once she'd made a decision. They'd learned that during deployments, when she'd volunteered for missions, other medics declined. When she'd stayed with wounded soldiers under fire, instead of retreating to safety. Megan stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets. Somewhere out there, Dwayne Martinez was probably sleeping soundly in his penthouse, confident that money and power would solve his Megan weight problem. He didn't understand that some problems couldn't be bought or intimidated, that some people had survived situations where wealth meant nothing, and power was measured in courage instead of capital. She turned back to her tactical bag, checking each item one final time. Body cameras, functional. Audio recorders, charged. Pepper spray, safety off, ready for rapid deployment. Medical supplies, because old habits died hard, and she never went into a fight without the ability to treat injuries. Her reflection caught in the window. A woman in sweatpants and an old army shirt, surrounded by equipment that told the story of two different lives trying to occupy the same person. But maybe they weren't different lives at all. Maybe she'd always been a soldier, just fighting different battles on different terrain. In his penthouse office, Dwayne Martinez reviewed the plan one final time with Frazier and Vincent Russo, a thick-necked man with dead eyes and scarred knuckles who charged by the hour for skills learned in darker alleys. She leaves the building around midnight, Dwayne said, pointing to surveillance footage on his monitor. Every night, same routine. You intercept her in the parking garage, away from cameras, away from witnesses. And the objective? Russo's voice was flat, professional. He'd done this work before. Make her understand that continuing her current path has consequences. Physical consequences. Nothing permanent. We're not animals. Just enough to convince her that quitting and signing a severance agreement is her best option. What if she resists? Fraser asked, looking uncomfortable. Russo smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. Everyone resists at first. That's when you escalate, until they stop resisting. Dwayne poured himself a scotch, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in his gut. He'd ordered intimidation before, had employees managed when they became problems. But something about Megan Waite felt different. The way she'd looked at him during their confrontation. The warning she'd given him. You're stepping into a kind of fight you can't win. Just make sure there's no blowback, Dwayne said. No witnesses, no video, no trail leading back to me. 15,000 buys a lot of discretion, Russo replied. By this time tomorrow, your janitor problem will be resolved. After they left, Dwayne stood at his window, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a kingdom he'd conquered through cunning and ruthlessness. He'd built an empire by understanding that fear was more valuable than respect, that controlling the narrative was more important than being right. Megan Waite was just another problem, and Dwayne Martinez had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with enough money and sufficient force. He raised his glass to the reflection staring back at him from the dark window. A successful man. A powerful man. A man who'd won by being willing to do what others wouldn't. But in the reflection's eyes, barely visible in the glass, was something he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. The first shadow of doubt that maybe, just this once, he'd chosen the wrong enemy. The underground parking garage of Martinez Global Holdings was a concrete cathedral of shadows and echoes, 4 levels deep beneath the glittering tower above. At 11:38 p.m., it held perhaps 24 vehicles, the cars of executives too important to use public parking, their luxury sedans and imported sports cars gleaming under harsh LED lights that created pools of brightness separated by long stretches of darkness. Megan Waite pushed her cleaning cart toward the elevator, her footsteps echoing off concrete pillars with rhythmic precision. To anyone watching, she was simply ending another shift. Tired janitor heading home after hours of invisible labor. Her maroon uniform was slightly rumpled, her ponytail coming loose, her movements showing the fatigue of a long day. But beneath the performance, every nerve was alive with tactical awareness. The body camera on her collar was recording, its tiny lens hidden behind a name tag. 2 additional micro cameras were positioned on structural columns she'd passed during her afternoon rounds, one near the elevator, one by the exit ramp to street level. All 3 feeds were uploading in real time to an encrypted server, backed up to 3 separate locations Gordon had arranged. In her right pocket, tactical pepper spray, safety off, positioned for a rapid cross-body draw. In her left, a tactical flashlight, 1,200 lumens, capable of temporarily blinding anyone who looked directly at it. On her cart, a mop handle she'd modified earlier, the metal shaft slightly loosened so it could detach with one sharp pull, becoming a non-lethal striking weapon. Thunder rumbled somewhere above, the sound filtering down through ventilation shafts. A storm was moving in, the weather service predicting heavy rain and possible flash flooding. Perfect cover for the kind of accident Dwayne had planned. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Gordon on the encrypted line. Gordon, security feed is looped. As far as the system knows, you left 15 minutes ago, but I've got eyes on the real feed. 3 heat signatures in the garage, northeast corner, near your position. Russo, Fraser, +1 I don't recognize. Megan kept walking, her pace unchanged, but her eyes tracked the shadows between parked cars. Northeast corner. That would put them near the maintenance closet, using the cover of an HVAC unit and a blind spot in the original camera placement. Amateur hour. They'd positioned themselves where the building's cameras couldn't see them, not realizing she'd added her own surveillance. She texted back with one hand, the other steady on her cart. Let them make the first move. Need this on video. Gordon. They're moving, splitting up. One heading to cut off the elevator, two approaching from behind. Megan's reflection appeared in a car window as she passed. A woman alone, vulnerable, heading toward an obvious trap. But her eyes, in that reflection, held something the attackers wouldn't see until too late. The cold calculation of someone who'd survived worse ambushes in places where backup was 30 minutes away, and mistakes meant death. She stopped her cart near the elevator, positioning it carefully. From her angle, she could see the approach vectors, the cover points, the escape routes. Her military training overlaid tactical data onto the civilian environment, sight lines, choke points, potential weapons in every pipe and fire extinguisher. Evening, Megan. The voice came from behind her. Fraser, trying for casual, but his tone carrying an edge of forced confidence. She turned slowly, keeping her hands visible, her body language neutral. Fraser emerged from behind a concrete pillar 15 feet away, wearing dark tactical pants and a jacket that bulked strangely around his torso. Body armor, probably, or maybe just the paranoia of a man who knew he was doing something wrong. Fraser. Megan's voice was calm, almost friendly. Working late? Could ask you the same thing. He took 2 steps closer, his right hand on meat, hovering near his waistband. Thought you'd be gone by now. Just finishing up. Megan glanced toward the elevator, noting the second figure positioned there. A stranger, tall and thick-necked, with the flat eyes of someone who'd done violence professionally. Vincent Russo, almost certainly. Problem with my cart earlier. Had to do some maintenance. Thunder rumbled again, closer now. The lights flickered briefly, shadows dancing across concrete. Thing is, Fraser continued, moving laterally to cut off her angle to the stairs, there's been some concerns about your behavior, about you accessing areas you shouldn't be accessing. Areas like the IT department? Megan kept her hands relaxed at her sides, but her weight shifted imperceptibly onto the balls of her feet. Funny how that's suddenly a concern when I'm just doing my job. A third figure emerged from the shadows behind her. Another man, shorter than Russo, but wiry, with the quick movements of someone who relied on speed over strength. The unnamed additional Gordon had mentioned. She was surrounded now. Triangle formation, probably 10 feet of separation between each attacker. Textbook intimidation setup. Make the target feel trapped, overwhelmed, helpless. But Megan had been in triangulated ambushes before. In Afghanistan, with actual rifles pointed at her instead of fists, and she'd learned that geometry worked both ways. "Gentlemen," she said quietly, her eyes moving between them with deliberate slowness. "Whatever Dwayne is paying you, it's not enough." Russo laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Confident for someone who's outnumbered 3-1. 3-1 assumes you're all willing to get hurt." Megan's voice dropped, taking on the command tone she'd used when directing casualty evacuations under fire. "I'm counting 2 of you who look nervous, and one who thinks he's still a cop with qualified immunity. Those are bad odds for everyone." "Shut up!" the unnamed man snapped, taking a step forward, aggression masking fear. Megan recognized the pattern. You're gonna listen to what we have to say." Lightning flashed through the garage's ventilation grates, followed immediately by thunder that shook the concrete structure. The lights flickered again, holding for 1 second, 2 seconds, then cutting out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim red bulbs that created a hellscape of shadows and blood-colored illumination. In that moment of confusion, of eyes adjusting to sudden darkness, Megan moved. She pulled the flashlight from her pocket and activated it at full power, sweeping the beam directly into the unnamed man's face. He cried out, hands flying up, his night vision obliterated by 200 lumens at point-blank range. Megan was already moving, yanking the mop handle from her cart. The metal shaft came free with a practiced twist, 3 feet of hardened aluminum that sang through the air as she pivoted toward Fraser. He was reaching for something at his waistband, pepper spray, or a taser, but she was faster. The mop handle cracked against his wrist with surgical precision, the same motion she'd used dozens of times with rifles during close-quarters combat training. His hand spasmed, and whatever he'd been reaching for clattered to the concrete. "Shit!" Fraser stumbled backward, clutching his wrist. "She's—" Russo was coming at her from the right, his movements controlled and purposeful, former cop training showing in the way he approached, hands up in a fighting stance, trying to close distance and grapple. But Megan had trained with soldiers who fought in full combat gear against enemies who wanted them dead, not corporate enforcers who thought intimidation was the same as combat capability. She feinted left, drawing Russo's weight forward, then drove the mop handle into his solar plexus, not hard enough to cause permanent damage, but sufficient to empty his lungs and send him stumbling backward into a parked Mercedes. The car alarm erupted in electronic fury, adding chaos to the garage's echoing darkness. The unnamed man had recovered from the flashlight, blinking through tears, and was charging at her with wild, undisciplined aggression. Megan sidestepped, using his momentum against him, and swept his legs with the mop handle. He went down hard, his head cracking against the concrete with a sound that made even Fraser wince. 3 seconds. That's how long the entire exchange had taken. 3 seconds to neutralize 3 attackers, to turn their ambush into her demonstration. But Russo was getting up, his face twisted with rage and embarrassment. "You bitch!" He came at her again, faster now, and this time she let him close distance. When his hands reached for her throat, when he committed fully to the assault, she dropped low, grabbed the cleaning solution from her cart, and sprayed it directly into his eyes. Not pepper spray, just industrial floor cleaner, heavy on ammonia. Enough to burn and blind temporarily, but leave no permanent damage. Russo screamed, pawing at his face, and Megan swept his legs with a textbook takedown she'd learned during Army combatives training. He hit the ground hard, and she was on him immediately, using zip-tie restraints from her pocket to secure his wrists behind his back. The same restraints she'd used on detainees in Afghanistan, muscle memory guiding her hands through the familiar motion. Fraser was backing away, his injured wrist held against his chest, his eyes wide with something that looked like genuine fear. "Jesus Christ, who the fuck are you?" "Someone who's tired of men like your boss thinking they can hurt people without consequences." Megan stood, holding the mop handle loosely at her side, her breathing barely elevated despite the violence. "You want to take a swing, Fraser? Or are you ready to have a conversation about what happens next?" He held up his good hand in surrender. "I'm done. I'm fucking done." The unnamed man was still on the ground, groaning and holding his head. Russo was cursing through the zip ties, his eyes streaming from the cleaning solution. The Mercedes alarm continued its shrill protest, echoing off concrete pillars. Thunder rolled overhead, and rain began hammering against the garage's entrance ramp, sheets of water visible in the red emergency lighting like curtains of blood. Megan pulled out her phone, keeping her eyes on Frazier while she typed a message to Gordon. Send police. Assault in progress. 3 suspects in custody. Then she walked to where Russo lay trussed and furious on the concrete. She crouched beside him, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, but the body camera on her collar caught every word. Tell Dwayne, she said, each word measured and deliberate. He picked the wrong janitor. Russo spat at her, missing by inches. You're dead, you understand that? Martinez will bury you. He's got lawyers, connections. He's got video evidence of conspiracy to commit assault, Megan interrupted. Recorded from 4 different angles, uploaded to servers his lawyers will never touch. He's got 3 witnesses who are going to flip the moment they realize they're looking at felony charges while he sits in his penthouse untouched. She stood, looking down at the 3 men with the same clinical assessment she'd used to evaluate wounded soldiers, deciding who needed immediate attention, who could wait, who was beyond help. You were supposed to scare me into silence, Megan continued, raising her voice so all 3 could hear. Make me understand my place. Make me too afraid to fight back. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Gordon had made the call, and Martinez Global's address probably lit up every nearby unit's dispatch screen. But here's what you didn't understand, Megan said, walking back to her cleaning cart, retrieving a first aid kit because old habits died hard, and the unnamed man was probably concussed. I spent 12 years in the Army. I've been scared by people with actual weapons in actual war zones. I've made decisions where getting it wrong meant people died. She knelt beside the unnamed man, checking his pupils, assessing for serious injury despite knowing he'd just tried to hurt her. Because she was a medic before she was a fighter, and that order of operations was written into her DNA. So when a millionaire in an expensive suit tries to threaten me? Megan's voice was almost gentle now, the tone she'd used with wounded soldiers who needed to stay calm while she worked. When he sends 3 men to rough me up in a parking garage? It doesn't scare me. It just makes me angry. The sirens were on top of them now, multiple units, their red and blue lights strobing through the rain as they descended the parking ramp. Car doors slamming. Radio chatter echoing. Frazier was already moving toward them, hands up, ready to surrender and probably negotiate. The unnamed man lay still under Megan's examination, conscious but dazed, and Russo, still zip-tied and cursing, was already calculating how fast he could cut a deal. Police! Hands where we can see them. Megan stood slowly, her hands raised, the tactical flashlight and mop handle visible, but non-threatening. 4 cameras recorded everything, she called out. The footage is already uploaded off-site. These 3 men ambushed me. I defended myself. An officer approached, weapon drawn but lowered, taking in the scene with the rapid assessment of someone who'd seen situations go from confusing to clear in seconds. He looked at Megan, disheveled but uninjured, then at the 3 men in various states of defeat. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me, he said, his tone professional but not aggressive. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention? I'm fine. They're not. Megan gestured to the unnamed man. Possible concussion, that one. The one zip-tied has chemical irritation to his eyes. Industrial floor cleaner, not pepper spray. The third has a possible fractured wrist, but is mobile. The officer's eyebrows rose slightly. You sound like a combat medic. Was, 12 years, Army. Megan let her hands drop slowly, watching the other officers move in to secure Russo and Frazier. I work here as a janitor now. Or I did, until my boss decided having me assaulted was better than having a conversation. More officers were flooding in now, establishing a perimeter, separating suspects, beginning the complicated process of turning chaos into evidence. One of them produced bolt cutters for Russo's zip ties while reading him his rights. The officer in front of Megan lowered his weapon completely. I'm Officer Martinez. No relation to the building owner, thank God. I need to get your statement, but first I want to make sure you understand. You're not under arrest. Based on the initial call and what I'm seeing here, you were defending yourself against multiple attackers. That's correct. And you said, there's video? 4 angles, all uploaded to encrypted cloud servers. I'll provide access credentials. Megan pulled out her phone, showing him the interface. Everything from the moment they surrounded me to the moment you arrived. Audio and video, high definition, unedited. Officer Martinez studied the screen, something like respect crossing his features. Lady, I've been working assault cases for 8 years, and I've never seen a victim this prepared. You planning for this to happen? I was warned it might, Megan said simply. So I made sure that if it did, there would be evidence. Thunder cracked overhead, and the rain intensified, water streaming down the entrance ramp in rivulets that reflected the emergency lights. Somewhere above them, in his penthouse office, Dwayne Martinez was probably sleeping soundly, confident his problem was being solved. He had no idea that in the last 15 minutes, his entire world had been dismantled, recorded, documented, and preserved in digital amber that no amount of money could erase. Megan looked at her cleaning cart, still standing where she'd left it, mop handle missing, cleaning solution half empty. The tools of her civilian life, repurposed for a battle she'd tried so hard to avoid. Ma'am? Officer Martinez was waiting, notebook out, ready to document her statement. Let's get started, Megan said, because this isn't just about tonight. This is about everything that led here. And everyone needs to understand that silence stopped being an option the moment Dwayne Martinez grabbed my collar and told me to know my place. She began to talk, and somewhere in the rain-soaked darkness above, the city listened. The emergency meeting in Dwayne Martinez's penthouse office began at 6:47 a.m., before the sun had fully risen over the city skyline. Rain still hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, remnants of the storm that had provided cover for last night's disaster. Inside, the air was thick with expensive cologne, stale scotch, and the kind of rage that came from a man realizing his control was slipping. Dwayne stood behind his desk, still wearing yesterday's shirt, his tie loose and his hair uncombed, the first time Gordon had ever seen his boss anything less than meticulously groomed. On the monitor behind him, a news website showed a headline that had gone live 30 minutes ago. Tech millionaire's employees arrested in alleged assault on company janitor. Explain, Dwayne said, his voice dangerously quiet. How 3 grown men failed to intimidate 1 woman half their size. Patricia Chen sat in the corner, her tablet clutched like a shield, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd been dealing with crisis management since the police scanner had lit up with Martinez Global's address. Sir, the situation is... I wasn't talking to you. Dwayne's eyes were fixed on Gordon, who stood near the door with Frazier's replacement, a nervous kid from the day shift who clearly wanted to be anywhere else. I was talking to my head of security, who was supposed to ensure this went smoothly. Gordon's jaw tightened. He'd spent the last 7 hours in his car outside the police station, watching Megan give her statement, watching Russo and the unnamed contractor, Jerry Mills, according to the arrest report, being processed and booked, watching Frazier make phone calls to lawyers who'd already started distancing themselves from this mess. With respect, sir, the situation didn't go sideways because of security failures. It went sideways because you ordered 3 men to assault an employee, and that employee turned out to be a decorated combat veteran who knew how to defend herself. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Careful, Gordon." Dwayne's voice was ice wrapped in velvet. "You're coming very close to insubordination. I think we passed insubordination when you ordered an illegal assault." Gordon kept his tone level, professional, but his hands were clenched behind his back. "Russo and Mills are facing felony charges. Frazier flipped within 2 hours. He's cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges. And there's video, sir. 4 different angles, all showing them surrounding her, all showing her defending herself." Dwayne's face flushed red. "Video can be explained. We say it was a security matter, that she was trespassing after hours, that force was necessary. She's an employee, on duty, in a building where she works." Patricia's voice cut through the delusion with clinical precision. "And the video shows them ambushing her, not responding to a threat. No lawyer in the world can spin that into justifiable force." "Then we pay her off," Dwayne snapped. "Whatever she wants, $1 million, $2 million, make her go away." "She already turned down settlement offers," Patricia said, scrolling through her tablet. "The police say she refused to negotiate before filing charges. She's not interested in money." Dwayne turned to stare out the window at the rain-soaked city, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "Then what does she want?" "Justice," Gordon said quietly. "She wants you to face consequences for what you did." The silence stretched like piano wire pulled taut. Then Dwayne turned, and his expression had shifted from rage to something colder, more calculated. "Gordon, I need you to fix this," he said. "I need you to do what Russo couldn't. Make her understand that continuing down this path will destroy her. Visit her apartment. Make it clear that accidents happen to people who don't know when to stop." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Gordon felt something crack inside his chest, the last remnant of professional loyalty, of telling himself he was just following orders, of pretending that a paycheck justified complicity in corruption. "No." Dwayne blinked, as if he'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Gordon straightened, his voice carrying the same command authority he'd used during his military contracting days when giving orders to men in combat zones. "I won't threaten her. I won't intimidate her. And I won't be part of whatever escalation you're planning." "You work for me," Dwayne said, his voice rising. "You do what I tell you to do, or you'll fire me?" Gordon pulled his security badge from his pocket and dropped it on Dwayne's desk. "Consider this my resignation. Effective immediately." Patricia looked up sharply, surprise crossing her carefully composed features. The replacement security guard shifted uncomfortably, suddenly realizing he was witnessing something that could come back to haunt everyone in the room. "You're making a mistake," Dwayne said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Walking away from 6 figures, full benefits, stock options, I'm walking away from being complicit in criminal conspiracy." Gordon pulled out his phone, holding it up so Dwayne could see the screen. "And I'm taking evidence with me. Every email you sent ordering surveillance on Megan. Every memo about managing problem employees. Every voice recording from your office about charity fraud and money laundering. Dwayne's face went white. "You're bluffing. Those files are encrypted, password protected, and I'm your head of security. You think I didn't have admin access to everything?" Gordon pocketed his phone. "I downloaded it all last night while you were sleeping off your scotch and convincing yourself this would all just go away. That's theft. Corporate espionage." Dwayne reached for his phone. "I'll have you arrested. For taking evidence of crimes I'm legally obligated to report." Gordon moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. "Go ahead and call the police, sir. I'm sure they'd be very interested in reviewing these files while they're investigating last night's assault." Patricia stood, her voice careful but urgent. "Mr. Martinez, I strongly advise you to consult with legal counsel before—" "Shut up!" Dwayne hurled his coffee mug against the wall, porcelain exploding in a spray of dark liquid and fragments. "All of you, just shut up and let me think." Gordon opened the door, then looked back one last time. "For what it's worth, sir, you could have just apologized. Could have admitted you were wrong at the gala, treated Megan with basic human decency, and none of this would have happened. But you chose humiliation, then intimidation, then violence, and now you're going to face the consequences of those choices." He walked out, leaving Dwayne standing in his penthouse kingdom, surrounded by broken porcelain and the rubble of an empire built on fear. Megan sat in her apartment at 10:23 a.m., a cup of coffee growing cold on the table beside her laptop. She'd given her statement to police, been photographed for evidence documentation, and finally been released with a detective's business card and instructions not to leave the city. She hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. The adrenaline from the garage confrontation had faded hours ago, leaving behind the familiar exhaustion that came after combat. Muscles sore, mind racing. The weight of violence settling into her bones, even when that violence had been justified. Her phone showed 73 missed phones, mostly from reporters who'd somehow gotten her number. The story had exploded overnight. Viral video of the gala confrontation, combined with news of the parking garage assault, had turned her into a symbol of something larger than herself. Working-class hero. Corporate whistleblower. Veteran fighting back against entitled wealth. She hated every word of it. A knock at her door pulled her from the spiral of thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw Gordon Hayes, looking as exhausted as she felt, holding a laptop bag and wearing civilian clothes instead of his usual security uniform. Megan opened the door, hand instinctively near the pepper spray still in her pocket. "Mr. Hayes?" "Just Gordon now." He held up his empty hands, showing he wasn't a threat. "I'm not working for Martinez anymore. Can I come in?" She stepped aside, letting him enter the small apartment. He looked around, taking in the Spartan furnishings, the military precision of her few possessions, the locked box on the shelf that practically radiated significance. "Coffee?" Megan asked, moving to the kitchenette. "Please." Gordon set his laptop bag on the table, sitting heavily in the single chair. "I'm guessing you haven't slept either." "Sleep is overrated." She poured 2 mugs, handing him one before settling on the arm of her couch. "You said you're not working for Martinez anymore. He fire you?" "I quit, after he asked me to finish what Russo started." Gordon sipped the coffee, wincing at its strength. "I told him no, took my security badge, and informed him I'd downloaded evidence of everything he's been doing. Corporate fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit assault, all of it." Megan studied him over the rim of her mug. "That's a federal crime, downloading company files without authorization. So is ordering people beaten up in parking garages." Gordon opened his laptop, pulling up folders filled with documents. "I figure if we're both going down, we might as well take the actual criminal with us." "We're not going down," Megan said quietly, "because we have evidence and truth on our side. Martinez has lawyers and money, but those don't mean much when the facts are this clear." Gordon scrolled through files, his expression grim. "I've been working for him for 3 years, watching him bully people, manipulate situations, treat employees like chess pieces. I told myself it wasn't my problem, that I was just providing security, that what happened after I delivered warnings wasn't my responsibility." "We all tell ourselves stories to justify what we do," Megan said. "I told myself that surviving Afghanistan when my unit didn't made me lucky instead of a failure. That coming home and hiding in a janitor's uniform was peace instead of cowardice." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition of parallel struggles, of two people who'd served different causes but carried the same weight. "You're not a coward," Gordon said. "Cowards don't stand up to millionaires in front of cameras. They don't fight off 3 attackers in parking garages. And you're not complicit just because you took time to find your moral compass." Megan set down her mug. "The question is, what we do now. You've got evidence. I've got testimony and video. Together, we can probably destroy Martinez's empire." "Probably isn't good enough," Gordon said. "We need certainty. We need to make sure he can't buy his way out of this or use connections to make it disappear." Megan stood, moving to the window, watching rain stream down the glass. "I've been thinking about that all night. The evidence is solid. Assault, fraud, conspiracy. But men like Martinez don't fall because of evidence alone. They fall because they can't help revealing who they really are when they're cornered." "What are you suggesting?" She turned to face him. "I'm suggesting we give him one more chance to make a mistake. One final confrontation where he shows the world exactly what kind of man he is. No PR spin, no lawyers, just his raw contempt and arrogance on full display." Gordon's eyes narrowed. "That's dangerous. If he's desperate enough, he might escalate beyond assault. Desperate men with resources do desperate things. I've dealt with desperate men before." Megan's voice carried the weight of Afghanistan, of combat zones where desperation was measured in bullets and blood. "The difference is, I understand them now. I know that predators like Martinez only respect power, and right now we have all the power." "He won't see it that way. He'll see himself as the victim, as being attacked by ungrateful employees." "Good." Megan moved back to the table, pulling up the video files from last night's garage confrontation. "Let him feel like a victim. Let him lash out. Because every time he does, he proves our case better than any testimony could." Gordon watched the footage, Megan defending herself with precision and control, 3 men disabled in seconds, the clear documentation of self-defense against unprovoked assault. You know this is going to get worse before it gets better. It always does. In Afghanistan, the enemy always got more desperate when they realized they were losing. IEDs, ambushes, suicide attacks. Desperation makes people dangerous. Megan paused the video on a frame showing her standing over Russo, calm and controlled despite the violence. But desperation also makes people make mistakes. And Dwayne Martinez has been making mistakes since the moment he grabbed my collar. "So what's the play?" Gordon asked. "We compile everything. Your files, my evidence, the police reports, the video. We build a case so airtight that no lawyer can crack it. Then we wait." Megan's expression hardened. "We wait for Martinez to do exactly what men like him always do when they're cornered. They attack. And when he does, we make sure the whole world is watching." Gordon was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You know, I looked up that ambush from 2019, the one in Afghanistan, where you lost your unit." Megan's jaw tightened. "That's classified." "The details are, but the broad strokes are public record. 6 KIA, dozen wounded, 1 medic who held the line while everyone else evacuated." Gordon's voice was gentle. "They gave you medals, but medals don't fix survivors' guilt, do they?" "No," Megan said softly. "They don't." "Is that what this is about? Redemption? Making up for the people you couldn't save by taking down someone who hurts people?" Megan moved to the locked box on her shelf, running her fingers along its edge without opening it. "In Afghanistan, I couldn't control the situation, couldn't predict the ambush, couldn't save everyone no matter how hard I tried. The enemy had all the advantages: high ground, surprise, firepower." She turned back to Gordon. "But here, now, I control the terrain. I know Martinez's moves before he makes them, and I have something I didn't have in Afghanistan: time to prepare, evidence to use, and allies who believe the fight is worth having." Gordon stood, extending his hand. "Then count me as one of those allies. Whatever you need, files, testimony, someone to watch your back, I'm in." Megan shook his hand, her grip firm. "You can't reason with men like him, Gordon. You expose them. You shine light on what they are until everyone else sees the monster beneath the suit. And if he comes after us, both of us, then we're ready." Megan moved to her tactical bag, still packed from last night, adding Gordon's laptop to its contents. "Because this isn't just about me anymore. It's about every employee he's crushed. Every person he's made feel powerless every time someone looked away because standing up seemed too hard." Gordon nodded, something like hope crossing his exhausted features. "What do you need me to do?" "Go home. Get some sleep. In 48 hours, meet me at the police station with every file you have. We're going to give them enough evidence to bury Martinez so deep he'll need archaeology to find daylight." "And in those 48 hours?" Megan's smile was cold, tactical, the expression of someone who'd planned operations in hostile territory, and learned that sometimes the best offense was letting the enemy make the first mistake. "In those 48 hours, we let Dwayne Martinez show the world who he really is. We let him rage, threaten, and reveal the predator he's been hiding. And we make sure every second of it is documented." After Gordon left, Megan stood at her window, watching the rain lighten to drizzle, watching the city emerge from the storm. Somewhere out there, Dwayne Martinez was planning his next move, convinced that money and power would save him. He had no idea that the quiet janitor he'd humiliated had already won this war, not through violence, but through patience, preparation, and the absolute certainty that some battles were worth fighting, no matter the cost. She pulled out her phone and composed a message to her military intelligence contact. "Megan, evidence package will be complete in 48 hours. Recommend coordination with federal prosecutors. Subject has interstate financial crimes that exceed local jurisdiction." The response came within seconds. "Contact. Standing by. You've done good work, Sergeant. Your team would be proud." Megan looked at the locked box on her shelf, at the medals and memories of 6 soldiers who'd never come home. "This one's for you," she whispered, "for everyone who couldn't fight back." And somewhere in the rain-washed city, the final act of Dwayne Martinez's empire began its inevitable collapse. The alley behind Martinez Global Holdings was a narrow canyon of brick and shadow, where the gleaming corporate facade gave way to dumpsters, loading docks, and the kind of darkness that existed in every city's hidden spaces. At 11:47 p.m., rain fell in steady sheets, turning the cracked asphalt into a mirror that reflected the single flickering streetlight at the alley's center. Megan Waite stood beneath that light, rain soaking through her dark jacket. Her hair pulled back tight, water streaming down her face like tears she'd never shed. To anyone watching, she looked small, vulnerable, alone. Exactly what Dwayne Martinez expected to find. But the body camera hidden in her collar was recording in high definition, streaming live to Gordon's laptop 3 blocks away. 2 additional cameras were positioned on the fire escape above, angles Megan had set up during her afternoon cleaning rounds, covering every approach to the alley. And in her pocket, alongside the tactical pepper spray, was her phone with a direct line to 911, pre-dialed and ready. She'd learned in Afghanistan that the best ambushes looked like opportunities, that enemies were most dangerous when they thought they had the advantage, that the moment before violence was when you either won or lost. Everything after was just execution. Thunder rumbled overhead, and she heard them before she saw them. Expensive shoes splashing through puddles, the low murmur of voices trying to sound confident, the distinctive click of a car door closing. Dwayne Martinez emerged from the shadows at the alley's entrance, flanked by 2 men Megan didn't recognize. Hired muscle, probably, brought in after Russo's arrest. They were bigger than the last crew, with the hard eyes and scarred knuckles of people who'd done real violence. Behind them, looking sick with reluctance, came Frazier, wrist still bandaged from their parking garage encounter, face pale in the streetlight. "Out on bail already?" Megan's voice carried through the rain, calm and conversational. "Must be nice having expensive lawyers." Dwayne stepped into the light circle, his Italian suit dark with rain, his carefully styled hair plastered to his skull. But it was his eyes that had changed. The polished arrogance replaced with something rawer, more desperate. A cornered predator finally realizing the prey had teeth. "You should have taken the money," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. $2 million, full NDA, chance to walk away clean. But you had to be difficult. Had to make this personal. You made it personal when you grabbed my collar in front of 50 witnesses. Megan's hands hung loose at her sides, but her weight was balanced, centered, ready. You made it personal when you sent 3 men to assault me in a parking garage. This? She gestured at the alley, at him, at the 2 enforcers flanking him. This is just you doubling down on bad decisions. One of the enforcers, a thick-necked man with prison tattoos creeping up from his collar, took a step forward. You got a smart mouth for someone who's outnumbered. I got a smart mouth because I'm not afraid of you. Megan's eyes never left Dwayne. Any of you. You're not the worst thing I've faced. Not even close. Dwayne laughed, but it was a brittle sound, cracking around the edges. You think, because you got lucky in a parking garage, you can stand up to me? I built an empire, Megan. I've destroyed people who were smarter, richer, and better connected than you. What makes you think? Because you're not destroying me, Megan interrupted. You're exposing yourself. Every threat you make, every man you send, every desperate attempt to silence me, it just proves everything I've said about you. The second enforcer, leaner, with the coiled tension of someone who relied on speed, circled to Megan's left, trying to flank her. She tracked his movement with her eyes, letting him think he was being subtle, calculating the angles and distances with muscle memory from close-quarters combat training. Last chance, Dwayne said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. $3 million, cash, offshore account. You disappear, I disappear this problem, and we both move on with our lives. You really don't understand, do you? Megan's voice was almost pitying. This isn't about money. It never was. This is about you learning that some people can't be bought, threatened, or broken. Then you're an idiot. Dwayne's face twisted with contempt. You're going to lose everything. Your job, your reputation, probably your freedom when my lawyers are done filing countersuits. For what? For pride? For some misguided sense of justice? For everyone who couldn't fight back. Megan's voice dropped, taking on the command tone she'd used in Afghanistan when giving orders under fire. For every employee you crushed. For every person you made feel powerless. For the janitor you humiliated because you could. Because you thought people like me existed to serve people like you. Lightning flashed, and in that split second of illumination, Dwayne's face showed something that might have been fear. Do it, he said to his enforcers. Teach her what happens to people who don't know when to quit. The thick-necked enforcer moved first, lunging at Megan with the aggressive confidence of someone who'd won fights through intimidation and size. But Megan wasn't intimidated, and size only mattered if you could land a hit. She sidestepped his charge with minimal movement, using his momentum against him, and drove her elbow into his kidney with surgical precision. The same strike she'd practiced 10,000 times during combatives training. He grunted, stumbling forward into a dumpster with a metallic crash that echoed through the alley. The lean enforcer was faster, coming at her with a fighter's stance and controlled aggression. He threw a jab that would have connected if Megan had been where she was supposed to be. But she'd already moved, flowing like water around his attack. Her hand finding his extended wrist and using his own force to pull him off balance. She swept his legs, a textbook takedown that sent him sprawling into the rain-slicked asphalt. Before he could recover, she was on him, knee on his spine, pepper spray deployed directly into his face. He screamed, hands flying to his eyes, and Megan was already moving to the next threat. Frazier stood frozen, his injured wrist held against his chest, his eyes wide with the recognition of someone who'd learned this lesson already. I'm not doing this again, he said, backing away. Martinez, I'm done. I'm fucking done. You're fired, Dwayne screamed at him. You hear me? Fired! But Frazier was already running, his footsteps splashing away into the darkness, leaving Dwayne alone with two disabled enforcers and a woman who looked like she'd barely broken a sweat. The thick-necked enforcer was trying to get up, one hand pressed against his injured kidney. Megan pulled zip-tie restraints from her pocket, the same ones she'd used before, always prepared, always thinking ahead, and secured his wrists before he could fully orient himself. Stay down, she said quietly. Police are already on their way. Resist, and you're adding charges. He groaned, but stopped struggling, the fight draining out of him as he realized he'd been outmatched from the beginning. Megan stood, rain streaming down her face, and turned to face Dwayne Martinez. He was backed against his imported sports car, the same one she'd accidentally bumped with her cleaning cart what felt like a lifetime ago. His expensive suit was soaked, his hair disheveled, his pale eyes wide with something that looked like genuine shock. You can't, he started, but his voice cracked. You're just a janitor. You're nobody. You don't get to... To what? Megan walked toward him slowly, deliberately, each step measured and controlled. To defend myself? To stand up when you try to knock me down? To refuse to disappear just because you ordered it? Dwayne swung at her, a wild, desperate haymaker with all his fear and rage behind it. Megan leaned back 6 inches, letting his fist pass through empty air, then caught his wrist and twisted, forcing him around until his chest pressed against the wet metal of his car. She didn't hit him. Didn't need to. The position alone, his face against the hood, arm controlled, completely helpless, communicated everything about the power dynamics reversal. "You said people like me clean up after people like you," Megan said, her voice low and steady near his ear. "You were right. Tonight, I'm cleaning up what you are." "Let go of me!" Dwayne struggled, but Megan's grip was iron. Years of carrying wounded soldiers and subduing combatants encoded into muscle memory. "You're assaulting me! I'll have you arrested!" "Really?" Megan pulled out her phone with her free hand, showing him the screen. The live feed was streaming. Every word, every action, uploading in real time to servers he couldn't touch. "Because, from where I'm standing, I just defended myself against 3 men you brought to assault me, again, in an alley, at midnight, while I was recording everything." Dwayne's face went white. "You're streaming this?" "To a former colleague who's forwarding it to every major news outlet in the city. By morning, everyone will know exactly who Dwayne Martinez really is. Not the philanthropist in the press releases, but the man who sends thugs to beat up janitors who won't stay quiet." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Red and blue lights began strobing against the alley's brick walls as police units converged on the location Gordon had called in. "They'll arrest you too," Dwayne hissed. "You assaulted my employees. I defended myself, again. With video evidence, again." Megan released his arm and stepped back, her hands visible and non-threatening as the first police car pulled into the alley's entrance. "The difference is, I understand the law, Martinez. Self-defense isn't a crime. But conspiracy to commit assault? That's 5 to 10 years. And with your priors, with Russo and Mills already cooperating with prosecutors, you're looking at actual prison time." Officers poured out of their vehicles, weapons drawn, voices calling for everyone to show their hands. Megan complied immediately, her movements slow and deliberate, her body language communicating cooperation rather than threat. "Officers," she called out clearly, "I'm Megan Waite. I'm the victim. The 2 men on the ground and this man," she indicated Dwayne, "attacked me. Everything is recorded and streaming to an off-site server. I'm armed with pepper spray in my right pocket, nothing else." The lead officer, Detective Sarah Chen, who'd taken Megan's statement after the parking garage incident, approached with her weapon lowered but ready. She took in the scene with practiced efficiency. 2 men disabled and restrained, Dwayne pressed against his car, Megan standing calm and composed in the rain. "Miss Waite," Chen said carefully, "this is becoming a pattern." "Yes, ma'am. A pattern of Dwayne Martinez sending men to assault me, and me defending myself." Megan gestured to the body camera on her collar. "Everything's recorded. Full audio and video, multiple angles, streamed live to ensure no tampering." Chen holstered her weapon and moved to examine the 2 enforcers, calling for backup and medical attention. Then she turned to Dwayne, who was trying to straighten his suit and reclaim some dignity. "Mr. Martinez," Chen said, her tone professional but cold. "I'm going to need you to come with me. You're being detained for questioning regarding conspiracy to commit assault, witness intimidation, and violation of a restraining order Ms. Waite filed this afternoon." "Restraining order?" Dwayne's voice was nearly a shriek. "I didn't know about any. You were served at 4 p.m. today at your office. Signed for by your assistant." Chen produced a document from her jacket. "Which means this encounter, You approaching Ms. Waite with hired enforcers after being legally ordered to maintain 1,000 feet of distance constitutes a criminal violation. Megan had filed the restraining order that afternoon on Gordon's advice, not because she was afraid, but because she understood how to build a legal case. Every move calculated, every step documented, every trap baited with Dwayne's own arrogance. "This is entrapment!" Dwayne lunged toward Chen, desperation overriding his last shred of self-control. "She set me up. She wanted me to come here." Two officers grabbed his arms, and he struggled against them, his expensive suit tearing, his carefully constructed image disintegrating into the rage and entitlement he'd always kept barely hidden. "You can't do this to me!" he screamed as they secured handcuffs around his wrists. "Do you know who I am? I employ 2,000 people. I donate millions to charity. I'm not some criminal you can just arrest." "Actually, sir," Chen said calmly, "that's exactly what you are. And thanks to Ms. Waite's thorough documentation, you're one of the easiest convictions I'll ever close." They led him toward the patrol car, and he kept screaming. Threats, pleas, demands to call his lawyers. But his voice was lost beneath the rain and sirens. Just another desperate man facing consequences he'd always thought he could avoid. Megan stood in the alley, rain washing the adrenaline from her system, and pulled out her phone. The live stream was still running, the viewer count climbing into the hundreds of thousands. Comments flooded past too fast to read, but the sentiment was clear. Justice, accountability, vindication. She ended the stream and dialed Gordon. "Did you get all of it?" she asked when he answered. "Every second. Already forwarded to NBC, CBS, ABC, and CNN, plus the New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal." Gordon's voice was shaky, with something like awe. "Megan, you just took down a millionaire on live television." "No," Megan said quietly, watching paramedics attend to the two enforcers while Detective Chen documented the scene. "I just held up a mirror and let him show everyone what he's always been. The taking down part? That's just gravity doing its job." She hung up and walked to where Chen was photographing evidence. "Detective, I'll need to give another statement. Tomorrow morning is fine. Right now, I want you to go home, get dry, and try to process what just happened." Chen paused, studying Megan's face. "You know, in 20 years of police work, I've never seen someone prepare for self-defense like you did. The restraining order, the cameras, the documentation. It's like you knew exactly what he'd do." "I did know," Megan said, "because men like Martinez are predictable. They escalate when you resist. They can't help themselves. Their whole identity is built on being able to crush opposition. So you let them escalate. You document everything, and you wait for them to reveal who they really are. That's either brilliant or insane. Sometimes it's both." Megan smiled, tired, but genuine. "But it works. And now Martinez can't hide behind lawyers or money or power. Everyone saw him for what he is." She walked back through the alley, past the police tape being strung up, past the media vans already arriving to cover the story. Her phone was ringing constantly, reporters, lawyers, advocacy groups, but she ignored them all. There would be time for interviews, for testimony, for becoming the symbol everyone wanted her to be. But tonight, she just wanted to go home, stand under hot water, and let the rain of violence finally wash away into memory. As she reached the street, she looked back one last time at the alley where Dwayne Martinez's empire had finally collapsed. The flickering streetlight cast dancing shadows on wet brick, and somewhere in those shadows, she could almost see the faces of her unit. Jenkins, Torres, Pack, Chen, Martinez, Williams. We fight the battles we're given, she whispered to the rain and the ghosts. And sometimes, we win. Then she turned and walked into the night. Just another janitor heading home after a long shift cleaning up other people's messes. But this time, the mess was justice served. The footage hit the internet at 12:14 a.m., uploaded simultaneously to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram by Gordon Hayes from 3 different accounts he'd created specifically for this purpose. The title was simple, direct, and algorithmically optimized for maximum viral spread. Millionaire Tech CEO caught on camera ordering assault on employee. Full footage. By 1 o'clock a.m. it had 10,000 views. By 2 o'clock a.m., 100,000. By dawn, the number had climbed past 3 million. And justice for Megan was trending in 17 countries. Megan woke at 6:47 a.m. to the sound of her phone vibrating against the nightstand, in a continuous rhythm that suggested something had fundamentally shifted while she slept. She'd managed maybe 3 hours of rest, dreamless, exhausted sleep that came after adrenaline crashed and the body finally surrendered to its limits. 73 missed calls, 214 text messages. Her email inbox showed 547 unread messages, the number climbing even as she watched. She opened Twitter first, still groggy, and the sheer volume of activity made her fully awake in seconds. Her timeline was flooded with retweets, quotes, and reactions to the alley confrontation. Video clips had been edited into dozens of versions, some focusing on Dwayne's screaming breakdown, others highlighting Megan's calm precision as she defended herself, still others analyzing the legal implications frame by frame. At Social Justice. Now, this is what happens when power meets accountability. Dwayne Martinez thought he could buy silence, but Megan Waite said no. Justice for Megan at LaborRights.org. Every worker who's been bullied by management needs to see this. You don't have to accept abuse. You can fight back. Justice for Megan. At Veterans. Advocate. Former Army combat medic defends herself against millionaires' hired thugs. This is what service and courage look like. So Justice for Megan, thank you for your service. But mixed with the support were the predictable attacks. At Corporate Defender. Convenient that she had cameras ready. This was a setup from the start. Martinez is the real victim here. At Faith Beefs. At Tech Bro. Logic. She assaulted his employees first. This is just self-defense being spun as heroism. Context matters. Stand with Martinez. Megan scrolled past both praise and criticism with equal disinterest. She'd learned in Afghanistan that external validation was meaningless. The only thing that mattered was whether you could live with your own actions. And she could. Her phone rang. Danny, from downstairs. Turn on Channel 7, he said without preamble. You're on the morning news. Megan found her remote and clicked to the local NBC affiliate. A polished anchor sat behind a desk, the chyron beneath her reading, Breaking. Martinez Global CEO arrested after viral assault video. Footage that has shocked the nation, the anchor was saying. Dwayne Martinez, founder and CEO of Martinez Global Holdings, was arrested last night after video evidence showed him orchestrating an assault on one of his employees, Megan Waite, a janitor and decorated military veteran. The screen cut to the alley footage. Dwayne's face contorted with rage, his desperate swing at Megan, his screaming breakdown as police led him away in handcuffs. Then it showed the earlier gala confrontation, the two incidents creating a narrative of escalating aggression that no amount of PR spin could soften. Martinez faces multiple felony charges, including conspiracy to commit assault, witness intimidation, and violation of a restraining order, the anchor continued. But this morning, federal investigators announced they're also examining Martinez Global's financial records for evidence of money laundering and charity fraud. The screen showed footage of FBI agents carrying boxes out of Martinez Global's headquarters, their windbreakers stark against the building's gleaming facade. Sources tell NBC News that the investigation was triggered by evidence provided by former Martinez Global employees, including head of security Gordon Hayes, who resigned yesterday after allegedly refusing orders to intimidate Ms. Waite. Cut to footage of Gordon entering the FBI field office, surrounded by agents, his expression grim but determined. Meanwhile, the hashtag #JusticeForMegan has become a rallying cry for workers' rights advocates and victims of workplace abuse. We spoke with labor attorney Rebecca Thornton about the broader implications. A woman in a sharp suit appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a law office. What we're seeing is a watershed moment. For too long, workers, especially those in service positions, have been told to accept mistreatment as part of the job. Megan Waite's decision to document, report, and ultimately defend herself against systematic abuse is going to change the conversation around workplace harassment and corporate accountability. Megan turned off the television and sat in the sudden silence of her apartment. This was what justice looked like in the modern world. Not a courtroom verdict, but millions of strangers watching footage and deciding that what they saw was wrong. The trial by social media that people criticized until it was the only thing standing between power and accountability. Her phone rang again, an unknown number with a New York area code. Against her better judgment, she answered. Yes? Ms. Waite, this is Jennifer Chen with the New York Times. I'm working on a story about your case and its implications for workplace rights. Would you be willing to comment? No, Megan said, then paused. Actually, yes, but not for a quote. If you want the real story, you'll need to do more than watch viral videos. By noon, Martinez Global Holdings was in free fall. The stock price had dropped 47% when the market opened, triggering automatic circuit breakers twice. 3 major investors had pulled their funding, releasing statements about fundamental concerns regarding corporate governance and ethical standards. The company's board of directors had called an emergency meeting to discuss removing Dwayne as CEO. In a conference room at the FBI field office, Gordon Hayes sat across from Special Agent Marcus Williams, a career white-collar crime investigator who looked like he'd been doing this job since before Gordon was born. Let's go through the charity foundation again, Williams said, his notepad filled with careful handwriting. You're saying Martinez used donor contributions as a front for money laundering? Not just donor contributions, millions from shell corporations that existed only on paper. Gordon pulled up files on his laptop, the same evidence he'd downloaded from Martinez Global's servers. The charity would receive a donation from a company in the Cayman Islands. That money would be processed through the foundation's accounts, taking a legitimate-looking path through various transfers and expenses. Then it would end up in offshore accounts controlled by Martinez or his associates. Williams studied the spreadsheets, his expression darkening. This is RICO territory. Racketeering, wire fraud, tax evasion. We're talking decades in federal prison if we can prove it. I can prove it, Gordon said. I've got transaction records, email correspondence, voice recordings of Martinez explaining the system to his accountants. He was arrogant enough to think his own security chief wouldn't document everything. Why did you? Williams asked. Document everything, I mean. This is more than covering your own ass. This is building a prosecution case. Gordon was quiet for a moment, thinking about Megan standing in that alley, calm and controlled while 3 men tried to hurt her. thinking about all the other employees he'd watched Martinez crush over the years, while he told himself it wasn't his responsibility. "Because I was tired of being complicit," he said finally. "And because someone had to be willing to burn it all down, even if it meant burning myself in the process." Williams nodded slowly. "You know you'll have to testify. Martinez's lawyers will come after you hard, claim you fabricated evidence, Juan, that you're a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. Let them. I've got 3 years of documentation, metadata proving when files were created, and surveillance footage showing me in Martinez's office during the conversations I recorded." Gordon met Williams's eyes. "I'm not afraid of his lawyers. I'm afraid of looking in the mirror and knowing I could have stopped this sooner." At 2:37 p.m., Frazier sat in his attorney's office, his bandaged wrist resting on the conference table, facing 2 federal prosecutors who'd offered him a deal he couldn't refuse. "Full immunity," the lead prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Amanda Reeves, said, sliding papers across the table, "in exchange for your complete cooperation. Every detail of every incident where Martinez ordered intimidation, assault, or illegal activity. Every instruction you followed, every conversation you witnessed, every crime you participated in." Frazier's attorney leaned close. "This is the best deal you're going to get. Without it, you're looking at conspiracy charges, assault, witness intimidation, 5 to 10 years minimum." "And with it?" Frazier asked, his voice hoarse. "With it, you walk, testify truthfully, help us build the case, and when this is over, you go home." Reeves's expression was cold, professional. "But if you lie, if you hold anything back, if we find out you've been less than completely forthcoming, the deal evaporates, and you face the maximum sentence for every charge." Frazier thought about the parking garage, about Megan's eyes as she'd stood over him after disabling him with a mop handle. Thought about the alley, about running away while Dwayne screamed at him to stay and fight. Thought about 3 years of following orders he knew were wrong because the paycheck was good, and telling himself he wasn't responsible for what happened after he delivered the warnings. He picked up the pen and signed. "Where do you want me to start?" he asked. "Start with the first time Martinez ordered you to intimidate an employee," Reeves said, opening her notebook. "And don't leave anything out." At 5:15 p.m., Dwayne Martinez sat in a holding cell at the county jail, still wearing his ruined Italian suit, his expensive watch confiscated during booking. His lawyers had managed to get a bail hearing scheduled for the next morning. But for now, he was just another inmate in orange scrubs waiting for his name to be called. The television in the common area was tuned to CNN, and he watched with growing horror as his life disintegrated in real time. Sources within the FBI confirm that the investigation has expanded beyond assault charges to include financial crimes spanning multiple years, the anchor was saying. Former employees have come forward with allegations of systematic fraud, money laundering through Martinez's charitable foundation, and a pattern of workplace abuse that prosecutors are calling unprecedented in its scope and brazenness. Cut to footage of protesters outside Martinez Global headquarters, holding signs that read, "Workers are not disposable, and justice for Megan and eat the rich." Martinez Global's board voted this afternoon to remove Dwayne Martinez as CEO, effective immediately, and to cooperate fully with federal investigators. The company's stock has lost 72% of its value, and several major clients have already canceled contracts. Dwayne turned away from the television, his hands shaking. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be the winner, the titan of industry, the self-made billionaire who played by his own rules because he was smart enough to get away with it. Instead, he was sitting in a jail cell, facing decades in prison, watching everything he'd built collapse because one janitor had refused to stay silent. At 7:30 p.m., Megan stood outside Martinez Global Holdings, surrounded by reporters and cameras, preparing to give her first public statement. Gordon stood to her left, Danny from her apartment building to her right. Moral support, witnesses, friends forged in the fire of fighting back. "Ms. Waite, how do you feel about Martinez's arrest?" a reporter called out. "Ms. Waite, are you going to sue for damages?" "Ms. Waite, what message do you have for other workers facing abuse?" Megan held up her hand, and the crowd quieted. She'd changed out of her janitor's uniform for the first time in public, wearing simple jeans and a black jacket with her old Army unit patch on the sleeve. Not hiding anymore, not invisible. 3 weeks ago, she began, her voice steady and clear, I was just trying to do my job. Clean floors, collect trash, go home. I didn't want attention, didn't want to be a symbol or a hashtag. I just wanted peace. The cameras clicked and whirred, capturing every word, but Dwayne Martinez decided I didn't deserve peace. He decided that humiliating me in public, sending men to assault me, threatening my safety, that all of that was acceptable because I was just a janitor, because people in service positions don't matter, because workers exist to be used and discarded. A reporter from the New York Times stepped forward. "Ms. Waite, Martinez's attorneys have offered a settlement, reportedly in the 8-figure range. Will you accept it?" Megan's jaw tightened. "No, and I'll keep saying no every time they ask, because this isn't about money. This is about accountability. This is about making sure that men like Martinez understand they can't buy their way out of consequences." "But you could be set for life," another reporter pressed. "Financial security. Never having to work again. Silence is a luxury," Megan said, her voice taking on an edge. "For people who've never been stepped on. For people who've never been told they don't matter. That their dignity is negotiable. That they should just accept abuse because fighting back is too hard." She paused, looking directly into the cameras, speaking to the millions watching live streams and news broadcasts. "I'm done being quiet. I'm done accepting that this is just how the world works. And I'm done letting men like Martinez hide behind their money and power while they destroy lives for sport." The crowd erupted with questions, but Megan was already turning away, Gordon and Danny flanking her as they walked toward the parking garage where, just days ago, she'd defended herself against 3 attackers. A young reporter, couldn't have been more than 25, caught up to her. "Ms. Waite, one more question. What do you want people to take away from this?" Megan stopped, considering. "That you don't have to accept being victimized. That documentation and preparation can be more powerful than money. That the system might be broken, but it's not beyond repair if enough people decide to fight back." "And what's next for you?" For the first time, Megan smiled, tired but genuine. "I'm going to go home, take a hot shower, and sleep for 12 hours. Then I'm going to testify, help the prosecution build their case, and make sure Dwayne Martinez never gets the chance to do this to someone else." She walked away into the evening, cameras still flashing behind her. Her phone still ringing with interview requests and settlement offers and messages of support from strangers who'd seen her story and recognized something of themselves in it. But for now, she was just Megan Waite, veteran and survivor, walking home through a city that suddenly seemed a little less hostile, a little more like a place where justice was possible if you were willing to fight for it. The reckoning had come. And for once, the powerful had lost. 6 months later, the federal courtroom was packed to capacity, every seat filled with journalists, former Martinez Global employees, labor rights advocates, and people who'd followed Megan's story from viral video to this moment of legal reckoning. Outside, protesters held signs and chanted slogans that had become familiar over months of trials and testimonies. Justice for workers, and no one is above the law, and simply Megan. Megan sat in the second row, wearing a simple dark suit that she still wasn't entirely comfortable in. Gordon sat beside her, his hand resting supportively on the bench between them. Across the aisle, she could see former Martinez Global employees whose stories had emerged during the investigation, people who'd been intimidated, harassed, and systematically abused for years while everyone looked away. Now, finally, someone was looking. Judge Patricia Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s who'd spent 30 years on the federal bench, reviewed the sentencing memorandum one final time before looking up at Dwayne Martinez. He stood at the defendant's table, flanked by lawyers whose expensive suits couldn't hide the defeat written across their client's face. Gone was the arrogant millionaire who'd grabbed Megan's collar at the gala. Gone was the polished tech CEO who'd built an empire on other people's suffering. What remained was a middle-aged man in a prison jumpsuit, his expensive haircut grown out, his pale eyes hollow with the reality of consequences he'd never believed would come. "Mr. Martinez," Judge Morrison began, her voice carrying the weight of judicial authority, "in my 30 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a comprehensive pattern of criminal behavior from someone in a position of power and public trust." She gestured to the stack of evidence folders on her desk. Wire fraud, money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy to commit assault, witness intimidation, tax evasion. The list goes on. But what strikes me most isn't the variety of your crimes. It's the casual cruelty with which you committed them. Dwayne's lawyer tried to interject, but Morrison held up her hand. You treated employees as disposable. You used your charitable foundation not to help others, but to enrich yourself. And when one of your employees, Ms. Megan Waite, a decorated military veteran, dared to stand up to your abuse, you escalated to violence rather than accept accountability. Morrison looked directly at Megan, and something like respect crossed her features. Ms. Waite's courage in documenting, reporting, and ultimately defending herself against your systematic attacks has exposed not just your individual crimes, but a broader culture of impunity that exists in corporate America. She turned back to Dwayne. The prosecution has recommended 15 years. The defense has argued for 5. I am sentencing you to 20 years in federal prison, without possibility of parole for the first 12. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Dwayne's lawyers immediately began whispering urgently, but he just stood there, the numbers settling over him like a burial shroud. Additionally, Morrison continued, you are ordered to pay $47 million in restitution to victims of your fraud schemes, forfeit all assets acquired through criminal activity, and surrender your business licenses permanently. You will never again hold a position of corporate authority or fiduciary responsibility. She brought down her gavel. Court is adjourned. As marshals led Dwayne away, he looked back one final time, his eyes finding Megan across the crowded courtroom. She held his gaze without flinching, without gloating, just steady acknowledgement that justice had finally caught up. Then he was gone, led through a door that would seal him away from the world he'd tried to dominate for 2 decades. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded Megan and Gordon as they descended the marble steps. Questions flew from every direction. "Ms. Wait, how do you feel about the sentence?" "Gordon, what's next for you?" "Megan, is it true you're working with Congress on new workplace protection legislation?" Megan stopped at the bottom of the steps, Gordon beside her, and faced the cameras that had documented every stage of this journey. "Justice isn't about revenge," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "It's about accountability." Dwayne Martinez will spend the next 20 years understanding that power without integrity is just tyranny, and tyranny eventually always falls. 4 months later, Gordon Hayes, security consulting, operated out of a modest office in a renovated warehouse building, the same building where Megan rented her apartment 3 floors above. The space was small but professional. 2 desks, a conference table, filing cabinets, and a coffee maker that actually worked. Megan sat across from Gordon, reviewing a contract from a mid-sized tech company that wanted to overhaul its workplace safety protocols after Martinez Global's collapse had made corporate culture a liability investors actually cared about. "They're offering $60,000 for a 6-month consultation," Gordon said, sliding the paperwork across the desk. "Full audit of their security systems, employee safety protocols, and harassment prevention training, plus expenses." Megan studied the contract, her reading glasses perched on her nose. A recent addition after months of reviewing legal documents had finally forced her to admit her vision wasn't what it used to be. "And they understand I'm not just consulting on physical security? That this includes workplace culture, employee rights, proper documentation procedures? That's exactly what they want. After what happened with Martinez, companies are terrified of being the next viral disaster. They want someone who can spot the warning signs before they turn into federal investigations. So basically, they want to avoid accountability by pretending to care about accountability," Megan said dryly. Gordon smiled. "That's why we charge them enough to actually make changes hurt a little. Speaking of which," he pulled up a spreadsheet, "we've got 3 more inquiries this week. A law firm wants harassment prevention training. A manufacturing company needs security protocol review. And a university wants you to speak at their business school about ethical leadership." "The university speaking gig? Is that the one in Boston?" "Yeah, $15,000 for a 90-minute keynote, plus travel and accommodation." Megan removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. In the 10 months since the alley confrontation, her life had transformed in ways she never imagined. The quiet janitor who'd just wanted peace had become a sought-after consultant, expert witness, and public speaker whose story had sparked a national conversation about workplace abuse and corporate accountability. "Book it," she said, "but make sure they understand I'm not giving some feel-good motivational speech. I'm going to talk about documentation, legal rights, and the reality that most companies only change when it threatens their bottom line." "That's exactly why they want you," Gordon replied. "You don't bullshit people. You tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear." A knock on the door interrupted them. A young woman entered, Maya Santos, Gordon's first full-time hire, a former Army MP who'd struggled to find decent work after leaving the service. "Sorry to interrupt," Maya said, "but there's a call for Megan from Congresswoman Martinez's office." Megan and Gordon exchanged glances. Congresswoman Linda Martinez, no relation to Dwayne, thankfully, had been championing worker protection legislation inspired by Megan's case. Megan took the call, and 5 minutes later hung up with an expression somewhere between disbelief and exhausted satisfaction. "The bill passed committee," she said quietly. "Full House vote in 3 weeks. If it passes, and Martinez thinks it will, It becomes law by end of year. Gordon leaned back in his chair. The WAIT Act, federal workplace protection legislation requiring companies to maintain transparent reporting systems for harassment and abuse, protecting whistleblowers, and imposing mandatory minimums for corporate executives who retaliate against employees. It's not perfect, Megan said, but it's something. It means the next person who faces what I faced will have legal protections, required documentation procedures, and consequences for executives who try to intimidate them into silence. That's not just something, Gordon said softly. That's a legacy. Present day, 10 months after sentencing, the alley behind Martinez Global Holdings looked different in daylight. What had been a canyon of shadow and threat was now just another urban service corridor. Dumpsters, loading docks, graffiti-tagged brick walls. The rain that had fallen that night was long gone, replaced by afternoon sunlight that turned the cracked asphalt into a mosaic of light and shadow. Megan stood under the same streetlight where she'd waited for Dwayne's ambush, now switched off and unnecessary in the bright November day. She wore dark jeans, boots, and a black jacket with her old Army unit patch embroidered on the left sleeve, a design Maya had commissioned as a gift after the sentencing. The building above her had new ownership. Martinez Global Holdings had been dissolved, its assets sold to pay restitution to fraud victims. The company that occupied the space now was a worker-owned tech cooperative that had made headlines by giving every employee, including janitorial staff, equity shares, and board representation. Progress, Megan thought. Slow, imperfect, but real. Her phone buzzed. A text from Danny, her neighbor who'd become something like a father figure over the past year. Danny, seeing you on PBS tonight for that documentary. Already set my DVR. Proud of you, kid. She smiled and pocketed the phone. The documentary, Justice in the Alley, How One Worker Took on Corporate Power, had premiered at Sundance and was now airing nationally. She'd participated reluctantly, still uncomfortable with being treated as a symbol rather than just someone who'd done what needed doing. Footsteps echoed from the alley's entrance. Gordon appeared, carrying 2 coffee cups from the shop around the corner. Their regular Thursday afternoon ritual when neither had client meetings. "Thought I'd find you here," he said, handing her a cup. "Anniversary pilgrimage?" Something like that. Megan sipped the coffee, letting its warmth chase away the November chill. Hard to believe it's been almost a year. "You changed the world in a year," Gordon said. "Federal legislation, corporate policy overhauls, a whole movement of workers refusing to accept abuse." "That's not nothing. I didn't change the world. I just refused to stay silent when someone tried to make me." Megan looked up at the building's facade, at the windows that used to belong to Dwayne's empire. The world changed because enough other people decided to do the same thing. They stood in companionable silence, 2 former soldiers who'd found a different kind of battle to fight, one where victory looked like legislation and precedent instead of territory held or enemies defeated. "You speaking at the Veterans' Rights Conference next month?" Gordon asked. "Yeah. They want me to talk about transition challenges, how veterans struggle to find their place in civilian life, how the skills we learned in service can feel useless outside combat zones." Megan's voice softened. "How sometimes you carry your war home with you, and the hardest battle is figuring out how to be at peace." "And have you figured it out?" Megan thought about Jenkins, Torres, Pack, Chen, Martinez, Williams, the faces that still visited her dreams, the weight she still carried. Thought about the locked box in her apartment that she'd finally opened last month. looking at medals and dog tags, and accepting that survival wasn't something to feel guilty about. "I'm getting there," she said. "Turns out peace isn't the absence of battle. It's knowing when to fight back, when to stand down, and when to just let yourself be human instead of a soldier." A group of young people walked past the alley's entrance, college students, probably, laughing about something on their phones. They had no idea what had happened in this space, what transformation had occurred beneath this unremarkable streetlight. That was okay. History happened in ordinary places, in moments that looked unremarkable until someone decided they mattered enough to fight for. Megan's phone buzzed again. An email notification from her literary agent. Yet another publisher wanting to buy her story, turn it into a book, a movie, a commodity to be consumed and forgotten. She deleted it without reading the details. "You know, they're going to keep asking," Gordon said, watching her. "The book deals, the movie rights, all of it. Let them ask. My story isn't for sale." Megan finished her coffee and dropped the cup in a nearby recycling bin. It's not entertainment. It's not inspiration porn. It's just what happened when someone decided that dignity mattered more than a paycheck. They walked together toward the alley's exit, toward the street where cars passed and people lived their lives, and the machinery of justice ground slowly forward. Behind them, the alley returned to its ordinary purpose, just another service corridor in a city full of them, distinguished only by what had been witnessed here. As they reached the sidewalk, Megan paused and looked back one final time. The sunlight caught the graffiti on the brick wall. Someone had spray-painted "Megan was here" in bright blue letters, already fading but still visible. She smiled, shook her head, and turned toward the future. "Come on," she said to Gordon. "We've got a consultation call in an hour. And I want to review their harassment protocols before we talk." "Always working," Gordon said, but his tone was affectionate. "Not working, fighting. There's a difference." Megan adjusted her jacket, the army unit patch catching the light. "You don't stop being a soldier just because the battlefield changes. You just learn to recognize new enemies." They walked down the street together, two warriors who'd found their war side by side in a civilian world that was slowly, painfully learning that accountability couldn't be bought, intimidated, or silenced. Above them, the city stretched toward the sky, millions of stories, millions of battles, millions of people trying to survive in a system designed to crush them. But somewhere in those stories was the knowledge that resistance was possible, that documentation was powerful, that one person's refusal to be silent could spark change that rippled outward in ways no one could predict. Megan paused at the corner, looking up at the skyline that had once belonged to men like Dwayne Martinez, titans of industry who thought money made them untouchable. "Peace isn't the absence of battle," she said softly, more to herself than to Gordon. "It's knowing when to fight back." Then she crossed the street, her stride confident and purposeful. A janitor turned warrior, turned advocate, carrying the weight of her past toward a future where maybe, just maybe, the next person wouldn't have to fight as hard. The city swallowed her into its daily rhythm of commerce and ambition, but her impact remained, in legislation, in precedent, in thousands of workers who'd seen her story and decided that silence was no longer an option. The battle wasn't over. It never really was. But today, the good guys had won, and that was enough. In memory of all those who fight back when silence seems easier, who document when deletion seems safer, and who stand up when staying down would hurt less. Your courage changes the world, one confrontation at a time. The WAIT Act, formerly known as the Workers' Accountability and Integrity Transparency Act, passed into federal law 18 months after Megan Waite defended herself in an alley. It has since been credited with protecting over 47,000 workers who reported workplace abuse, with 89% of cases resulting in successful prosecution or settlement. Dwayne Martinez is currently serving his sentence at FCI Butner Medium I in Bryn, North Carolina. He will be eligible for parole in 2037. Gordon Hayes, Security Consulting, now employs 17 people, specializing in ethical workplace safety and veteran employment programs. Megan Waite continues to consult, speak, and advocate. She still cleans her own apartment every Sunday, finding peace in the rhythm of honest work. Some battles end, some warriors rest, but the fight for dignity never stops.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.